least we got some air.
One is staying open. One is fighting for its life right now.
I believe in you! Alright, I'm gonna start my live. Crying over someone. Why is my mic quiet right now? Testing one. Oh, there we go. Is it really that directional? If I talk over here, then if I oh no, it's just matters how far away I am. Howdy, howdy. Hope everybody's having a day. Just getting things set up and we should be good to go soon. Just gotta get the chat out. Gotta set up my streaming thing, my stream bot. Howdy, howdy. Thank you guys for joining me. Can you live stream on weekends? When I move back to the States, I may change my schedule, but as it is right now, I'm gonna keep my current schedule. And that one's closing too. Honest opinion, do I look like a blobfish? Hey, blobfish can be okay, especially when they're underwater. Don't be down on yourself. Yeah, no, it's been a while since I've been on Parker's live. He was up late last night, so I was able to catch him when I got up. All right, we have a guest. Let's bring on a guest. We have our first guest. All right, let's talk to Harit. Harit, how's it going?
Yeah, not bad. How are you?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm wearing the wrong headphones. Big dumb. One sec.
Yeah, no problem.
I should be able to hear you now.
Yeah, loud and
Okay,
clear.
great, great. So, what do you believe?
I believe that this universe that we live in, it has to have a creator, something that's caused the first mover.
Why?
Because I can't accept that something can come from absolute nothingness. When I say absolute nothingness, I don't mean Lawrence Krauss is nothing. I mean absolute, like not even the laws of physics is there,
Yeah, so why do you, so I have two questions. One, why do you think that something can't come from nothing?
Because from nothing comes. Or better still,
why do you believe that?
We don't see that in nature. I mean, I don't
Well,
have no
that's because we're in a universe. It's quite possible that once you're in a universe where there is something, there's no more nothing for something to come from.
I think the closest that I have researched, I think the closest we have come is with Alexander Vilenkin's quantum tunneling. But even there, he admits, he said that, look, we have to
No,
have
I'm not
the
talking about that. Look, so I mean,
Yeah.
I guess there's two branching points. First, you believe the universe came from nothing. God didn't make the universe out of something, right? You
But there was a
believe that
power-
he made it, that there was nothing, and then he made something, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so that is something coming from nothing. But beyond that, I don't see why something couldn't come from genuine nothing. I don't see why I should believe that that's impossible.
So, to answer your first question, we do believe that God created this from nothing, but we say that there was a power behind that, yeah?
Okay,
So
but so it is possible for something to come from nothing.
If there is a power that creates that, yeah.
Okay, so there's an
Otherwise,
exception to
there's
your
no
principle.
power.
So why should I accept your principle broadly?
Because if you have no power that's behind that, nothing. I mean, literally nothing.
Yeah, genuinely nothing.
Then, yeah, exactly. But see, the problem is,
wait.
Doctor,
So let's say that there's genuinely nothing. Why can't something come from it?
So the problem is, we might have different definition of nothing. Okay.
No, I'm referring to the philosophical notion of nothing.
Yeah.
So why can't something come from it?
Because in the universe that we see design, we see
Wait, hold
yeah,
on.
we live in a
What does that have to do with the principle you're trying to impose? That
okay, why is that? Why is
from
there
nothing,
something?
nothing comes.
Okay,
Why
then
should I believe that principle? Why do you believe that principle?
Okay, yeah, that's a fair question. So why is there something rather than nothing then?
That's not my question.
If I am inside this universe,
That's not my question.
no,
My
no, but your
question
question was
my question is why should I believe that something cannot come
Yeah.
from nothing?
because you don't have anything that has come from absolute nothingness.
But I've
I mean,
never
there's
experienced
not a
I've
single
never
example in
I've never experienced absolute nothingness. So I have no so I shouldn't haven't like it's not like I've experienced nothingness and then nothing came from it.
Yeah.
I haven't experienced nothingness. So maybe, in fact, whenever there's nothingness, something comes from it. We have no pre-existing knowledge about how nothingness behaves, if it behaves at all, which of course it doesn't. Because
Exactly. To be fair, you have a point there because look, there's not a consensus amongst the scientists that we have they don't have a single even with Big Bang they have a lot of different versions. Some believe that the universe had a start. Others believe in a steady state theory that the universe has always existed there. I guess the best thing we could say is we have to be agnostic because we don't know.
But then why did you use this as an argument if you're agnostic about
because
it?
I lean to more I lean towards that.
Why?
Well, because I ask myself this fundamental question: why is there something rather than nothing? And then
Yeah.
I conclude, yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah. So and then I conclude, well, it's easier for me to explain that okay, something has to be behind all of this. Just
But then that doesn't explain why there's something rather than nothing. Because
Oh,
it could have
neither
been that
can
there
you.
was it could be that there, like, under your worldview, it could be that there could have been genuinely nothing, not even a god. But you're just saying, well, the reason why there's something rather than nothing is because there was actually something the whole time.
Yeah, I lean towards that.
I mean, it's just not an answer. Like, it's not an explanation as to why there's something rather than nothing.
But I think yeah, that's the interesting thing. I mean, both of us we have opposite,
Right, but you believe in this thing
beliefs.
for this reason, right? So you're not agnostic.
Well, I lean towards that. Yeah. I lean towards a god.
But why?
Like say for example, let me give you an example. Yeah, say for example, someone comes and believes in Spinoza, type of Spinoza's
Yeah, I'm
God,
familiar.
and says my God is not even just. He's not just. I believe in Spinoza's God, that nature is God. It's very hard to to disprove that God. Wouldn't you
Well,
agree?
I would just say that that's just not what people mean when they say God. Like, if the God doesn't have a mind and it doesn't have any mental characteristics, we have a word for that, and it's called the universe.
Exactly, but then,
So,
see,
but
that's
so
very
like
different.
on the matter of actual, points of merit, an atheist and a
Yeah.
Spinozan agree on everything.
But then here's the thing: who are you to give the? There is not a universal definition of God.
Look,
My
I mean, like,
definition of
they can call it God if they want, but like on the
Okay.
actual on the actual merits or on the actual substance of the discussion, atheists and Spinozans don't agree on anything or don't disagree on anything.
Okay, yeah. No, fair enough. I agree with you. If someone chooses to call that God, if that's your definition, fine. Then I agree with you. Yeah, because then exactly. But then when some of your friends, when they put a title like your God is imaginary. Now imagine if someone like that comes, that truly be, because a lot of people believe in Spinoza's God, and some of them don't even believe that their God is just. If they do and have that definition, then wouldn't you say that title wouldn't apply to them?
Yes, because they mean something when they say the word God in their
Very good. Yeah, very. You're very honest. I like you. Yeah, I agree with you. So it goes back to. Anyways, I have a science question if you don't mind answering that.
Make it quick.
Okay, the quadrupole, octuple, and the dipole.
Yeah.
Have they refuted that? It's called the axis of evil. Have they refuted that yet?
So it seems to be kind of contentious. So some people will definitely say, oh yeah, no, we still have no explanation for it. And then other people will say, oh yeah, we got an explanation for it back in 2016. It was like dust being it was like a small amount of dust causing an amplification of an otherwise statistically insignificant deviation. So
No,
like
that was
it's
actually Yeah, that was Max Tegmark. But the problem here's the problem. Okay, so they went and that was with WMite and Kobe probe. But
This was like in
when
2017,
Planck,
I think.
no. This was actually early because I have the Max Tegmark say that. But then when Planck came back, with its data, then he said, "Look, I don't have an explanation."
Well, I don't think I'm referring to Max Tegmark. It may have been a similar person. It may have been a similar claim, but like it's
Georgia
definitely
Safford?
not. It's definitely I could find a reference for you if you want at some point, but I'm not going to do that now. It's definitely not. It's definitely not universally believed that we have no explanation for this. I'm not making a judgment claim. I'm not saying who's right or who's wrong. But there are people who think, oh yeah, we definitely have an explanation, and there are other people who think, yeah, we have no explanation. So it's just there's just no consensus, as far as I know.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Because I've looked very hard. I don't see any refutation, and that's very interesting. But yeah, okay. Thank you for your time.
Of course, thanks for being here. By the way, if you want to, Kokomon, if you want to see the hair come down, then you need to either encourage your compatriots on TikTok to like the live, which if we get to 100K, I will, or you have to encourage your compatriots on YouTube. We need 200 likes on YouTube in order for me to put my hair down. So, you gotta work for it. Oh, we have a guest on YouTube. Let's bring up a guest from YouTube. We actually have a few guests on YouTube. B times, can you hear me? B times? B times? Hello? Hello? Hello, hello? Alright, looks like B times has vanquished the building. Alright, let's bring up Hunter Parker. Oops, nope, not hang up. Hunter, how's it going?
Howdy, wow, can't believe I'm on. Big
Yeah,
fan of
here
your
you
work,
are.
first off, thank you.
I appreciate
Thanks for
that.
having me on.
What are we talking about? What God do you believe in?
Well, I'd like to give some context first. I'd say I was a pretty adamant atheist for a very long time. And, I I'm Jewish. I'd say I'm non-practicing. I definitely have faith now. I think I'm kind of more agnostic, but I do lean much more towards belief. I'd say. I don't exactly know what's going on, but I do lean more towards belief. But Judaism.
So
It's
let me
not.
give you
It's
some
not.
background here. So I mean,
Yeah.
perhaps worthwhile explaining to the guests. I'm Jewish too.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Good to know.
So like I'm very familiar with your experience. Presumably.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So as you know, Judaism is much more about understanding than blind faith.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I remember one thing really stuck with me in my upbringing in Judaism. I forget who said it. Some rabbi said it a long time ago, but he said, you know, you can choose to believe in God or not. There's nothing I can say or do that will convince you in the existence of God. It's your choice. So essentially, you can either choose to believe in God or not choose to believe in God. You just do the one that makes you happier. Do the one that is more fulfilling in life. And I think that in and of itself is what, it's not the whole thing that made me believe in God, but it definitely made me lean more towards it.
So
That
certainly, I absolutely agree with you that the reason I still call myself Jewish, even though I've been an atheist for as long as I can remember, my mom took me to synagogue when I was like 4. Like, this is one of my earliest memories. My mom took me to synagogue when I was like 4 or 5, and I asked my mom if the rabbi. There were 2 rabbis on the bima. I asked my mom, "Is that God?" And she said, "No, God is all around you." And I just remember thinking that's kind of silly, and I just didn't believe any of it, like, at all from that point on. But I still call myself Jewish because you don't have to believe in God to be Jewish. It turns out.
I mean, Jewish is also, it's a race as well.
I don't know if I'd use the word race, but it's definitely an ethnicity.
Okay, ethnicity.
It's a people,
yes,
a nation,
Yeah. Yes. I mean, you can trace it through genetics.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, like, I also had a
yeah.
Jewish wedding, for example.
Okay, yeah. And you can be I would say I am culturally Jewish. I
Sure.
still celebrate holidays. I don't go to temple. I don't pray like that. I still I still think about God. I still, meditate, those sorts of things. But, I think a big part of what converted me, I'd say, is partly psychedelics.
Why is it always psychedelics? It's always psychedelics.
Have you done psychedelics?
No, I haven't. It's on my to-do list.
There
But
you go.
Like the amount of people who come on and be like, "Oh yeah, I believe now." Like, we know what psychedelics do. They make your brain perceive things that aren't there and think things that are not ordered thoughts. Right? We know what psychedelics do. So why should we allow the experience that we have on psychedelics influence the way that we're thinking when we're sober?
I think, that's an easy thing to say if you've never taken psychedelics. The mind is very powerful, and I think that, in an altered state on psychedelics, you're in ways more sober than you are off of psychedelics. And that's impossible to describe without being on them. I mean, I have a good friend, and he does psychedelic integration therapy. That is his job. He helps. He first started off helping special ops veterans do psychedelic integration therapy, and he uses 5-MeO DMT, and that's referred to as the God molecule. And he said, pretty much every person who does that drug has some sort of faith afterwards.
So
can be
wait a minute.
Completely atheist before.
Consider what you're saying. That means that it's changing your brain chemistry. It doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that the faith that you generate is true.
I mean, what does it mean to be true or not true?
Well, it doesn't mean that belief is pointing to a true fact about the world.
I mean, when it comes to God, to say, if it's true or not, you have to define what is God. Do I think that there's like some sort of thing in a robe in a
Nobody
heaven,
thinks that.
creating
Nobody thinks that that's what you think.
No, yeah. So, I mean, I'd say, if anything, God is the universe itself.
Well, but then you have no substantial disagreements with atheists. Atheists agree the universe exists. If by God you mean the universe, then there's no substantial disagreement, right?
Exactly. And that comes to my main point, that what I've really settled on recently is believing in God and not believing in God are pretty much the same thing. There's really not much of a difference. Not really.
I mean, like, so if you believe that God is the universe, more power to you. You're something like a Spinozan, who was Jewish, by the way. And also somewhat like Einstein. But the vast majority of believers, at least in the United States and in Europe, the notion of God that they believe in is like some sort of, disembodied mind that exists outside of the universe, that like has thoughts and a will and is able to take actions and, control things and perhaps create universes and so on and so forth. So this is like a separate position from the belief that the universe is God. And so I have a substantial disagreement with them. Like, I don't think that such things exist. They do. That is a substantive disagreement, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe my belief of God is more abstract than even that. I think that's why I believe that believing in God is not much different from not believing in God. I think,
well, yeah, perhaps the notion of God that you believe in, that there might not be a significant distinction. But do keep in mind, that's not the traditional Jewish perspective, right?
Yes, of course.
There's I think Spinoza was actually kicked out of his synagogue for the beliefs that he had.
Who was?
Baruch Spinoza, the guy who kind of originated this notion that, oh, God is the universe kind of thing.
Really, that's
yeah. He was a Spanish Jew, and I think he was like ostracized. Yeah, he was Sephardic. I think he was ostracized and maybe kicked out of his, or like, not kicked out, but like forbidden to come back to the synagogue because it was heresy. Like like Jews don't really do heresy, but like it was the kind of thing where like, yeah, that's like you're you know, it was just completely in disagreement with, you know, the traditional Jewish belief system.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, you're not alone.
Mm-hmm. What do you believe in terms of consciousness? Do you believe that, you know,
I think it's a brain thing.
Consciousness, it's a brain thing. You think that consciousness comes from the brain?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like, look, we just have so much evidence of this. And when I say evidence, I don't mean proof, but like the way that we do science is, you know, if you make an observation and then you have some hypothesis, and if that hypothesis predicts some particular thing and then that thing comes true, that's evidence for your hypothesis. And so like the hypothesis being that consciousness is a product of the brain, well, one of the predictions that you might make of that is, well, if you do something to the brain, the conscious experience will change. And that's like obviously true, right? So like there's loads of evidence that the brain, that consciousness is a brain thing. Of course, it's not proof, but like it is, like there is tons of evidence, tons of empirical evidence.
Yeah, I mean, from my personal experience, I think that consciousness is more of, it's something tangential to materialism. It's not, you know, a product of the brain. The brain's a receiver of consciousness.
Well, yeah. So the point is that's, I mean, like you can believe that if you want, but it's an unfalsifiable position, right? Like there's nothing that you could do to test that. So, you know, and on top of that, it is ontologically more complicated than just that the brain is the generator of consciousness, right? Because then not only do you need the receiver, you also need the generator wherever else it comes from.
I mean, sure, but I don't know that that's more ontologically complicated than.
Well, there's just more stuff,
it's
right?
Stemming from the material.
I mean, like so in your worldview, you have the brain, which is the receiver, and then you have, you know, wherever consciousness comes from, something is generating it, or maybe it's an intrinsic property, whatever. You have some additional object, whether it's consciousness itself or something generating consciousness or something like that. And that's just not part of my ontology. So your ontology just has at least one extra thing.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. Yes, I see that. So do you believe in nothing paranormal, supernatural? What do you say with the you know, thousands of years of people claiming of spirits, of ghosts, of supernatural things?
So I'm generally pretty skeptical of it. But I am like, and you know, a lot of the people in like the skeptic community don't like this, but I'm absolutely open to the possibility that there's like, you know, it could be the case that there is some unexplained physical phenomena that causes what we might think of as, you know, various like psi stuff, like telepathy or something. Maybe there really is some physical explanation for why some people have these explanations. I kind of doubt it, but like if that's a thing that's real, then we should be able to prove it in a lab, and, you know, then I'd be down to believe that.
Yeah, you know, I think that to say that it's not real without proof in a lab is difficult because, you know, we could be thousands of years from proving that.
So I'm not saying that it's not real. I'm just saying I'm skeptical. So like, when somebody says, oh, you know, I had a psychic experience, I'm like, I don't really believe you. I'm not going to be like 100% you're wrong, that's impossible, you know, that's absurd, you're crazy. I'm not going to be like that, but I'm going to be like, because that disagrees with everything I know about how the world works, I'm going to be very, very skeptical of that. But if somebody comes along and shows that it's actually a real thing and we can, you know, empirically demonstrate it and stuff, then I'll be like, okay, yeah, cool, it's a part of the world.
Have you heard of the telepathy tapes? You know what that is? So
many people have mentioned it. I refuse to watch it. I'm like, honestly, the whole consciousness thing is like not scientifically interesting to me. Like I just don't care. I'd rather think about black holes, and you know, so it's just not something I'm interested in examining, especially because everybody's been telling me to, and I'm kind of what is it? Oppositional.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge if it's true, but it's also huge if it's quite a lie. You know, I don't know what to make of it. I don't know if it's true or false. You know, it's interesting to say the least to me. But if it's not interesting to you, then don't watch it. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, you only have so much mind bandwidth, right? And like, yeah, there's fascinating things in evolutionary biology that's happening. There's fascinating things in psychology. There's fascinating things in archaeology. There's fascinating things in physics. I just don't have time to consume every podcast in every field.
Have you ever? So you've never experienced anything that's, you know, unexplained to you?
I don't think so. At least not that I can remember.
That's. Totally. Yeah, I mean, I think that without those experiences yourself, that it's very, very hard to believe in anything.
Yeah,
And
I can understand that.
I don't think I could believe in anything without the experiences that I have personally had.
So absolutely, it could be the case that all I'm missing is some sort of spiritual experience, and then I would be like, at least if not converted, I would at least be spiritual. I know that those are very, very compelling for like most people, right? Like most people, the reason why they end up being spiritual or religious is because they had an experience, and I get that. Like personal experiences are probably the most compelling way. Just because humans are really, really bad at like being rational, personal experiences, things that happen to you, are super compelling. I just haven't had those, so.
Yeah, and yeah, I understand your perspective, because that was me for a very long time. You got to see it to believe it, and I wouldn't believe anything without seeing it. Well, thank you for your time. I got to run.
Of course.
It was
Have a
good
good one, bud. Likewise.
Take care.
All right. Let's bring up. Oh, yes, I am. I am sure that I wish to disconnect this user. Okay. Let's bring up a guest from TikTok. By the way, we have 2 super chats. From Nectu for the $2. How many likes to shave your head on live stream? It's not going to happen. And then from Grimlock with the $20. Huge W to Grimlock. Thank you so much. It's so generous and kind. All right. TikTok is being currently slow, but we're working on it. Come on. Guest box, open up. Come on, guest box. Do your thing. Work your magic. Okay, good. All right, Colin is saying me, so let's bring up Colin.
Hello.
Colin, how's it going?
Hey, what's up? I just want to say I'm a huge fan of your videos. I love all the physics stuff you do.
I'm glad.
So I would say I'm spiritual. I'm a neuroscience and philosophy major in university right now. And I'm a pretty like hard determinist, I'd say. But I was having this conversation with my dad the other day.
Before we continue, do you actually believe in a god?
I would say I'm like more like Buddhist type of thing, where like there's like something beyond like a consciousness, like the guy was saying. But I wouldn't say there is like a god.
I'm looking for conversations with theists, and not just people who are generally spiritual.
Okay.
Sorry about that, bud.
Could I ask this one question before I get off?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So I would say, like, we were having this conversation. I was like, when you don't believe in free will, right, then like it's, to me, like you're not gonna like judge yourself or other people. And he was like, and I was like, in my ideal society, it's like classless, stateless, moneyless, all this, right? He was like, that's similar. He was like, that's similar to heaven. And I was like, he was like, but I think that's not like possible on earth, because of like, you know, when a Christian, they talk about like, you know, like human nature. And I was like, I disagree. But like, he was like, the reason that you believe in this is because God has like put this in your head, that like, it's just a different way of coming to the same conclusion. So I was just like, what do you think about that? Like, if it's like, I know it's like, I don't know, it's like it's a weird connection where like, he thinks that like a heaven, you know, like this ideal society is.
He thinks that heaven is communist.
Yeah.
I mean, like, look, if your dad thinks heaven is communist, then it sounds like he's pretty It sounds like he's pretty sympathetic to communism, so welcome to the left, bud. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know
yeah.
what else to tell you. Or to tell your dad, I guess.
Yeah. All right. Well, sweet. Just wanted to say that, and yeah, love your videos. Keep it up.
Thanks, bud. Take care.
Thank you.
All right, let's bring up the next guest. By the way, just because you say it's impossible doesn't mean it is. I believe that we can. I absolutely believe that we can achieve a fully automated luxury gay space communism. Okay, I want my Star Trek. I know. High computer load detected. I know. Ever since OBS updated, my computer's been struggling more. Tomas. Is Thomas here, or is it just me being slow? I don't think he's here. All right. Let's move on to the next guest. Can you disprove the Christian God? I mean, you're welcome to come up at Clay, and we can talk about it. Travis, how's it going?
What's going on?
Not a whole lot. What
You
God
hear
do
me
you believe in?
So you know what? I'm going to tailor off of the last two people, and then I'll let you go. It's sort of the same idea, I guess. I would say I'm not.
Do you
theist,
believe in a
so I'll
God?
stay up here. I do
Okay.
not know.
Okay, then
Not,
make it
not
quick.
in the traditional sense that you'd say theist, but I have one question before I go, kind of like the last two. What is it that you think we as human beings are?
We're
objectively?
biological organisms with big brains.
All right. I thought, I might be able to tailor it into something else, but we'll leave it at that. No problem.
All right,
Dr. Blitz.
take care.
We'll leave it.
All right, y'all. If you're in the guest box because you want to ask a question and I'm being generous, I'm kicking the next person who says they're not a theist. Just letting you know. Dan, how's it going?
How you doing?
I'm doing all right. What God do you believe in?
I would call myself a Christian, and so I believe in like one true God
Okay,
That-
that's fine.
who's over heaven.
The only reason I just asked that question because some people don't want to claim a religion, but they still believe
Yeah,
in a
well-
God associated with religion. So it's fine. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
I believe in the sense that like we aren't supposed to technically follow religion because religions like religions do a lot of things in the sense of like they do tear they can like tear communities apart. I believe in Jesus, and I feel like you're supposed to only follow Jesus. And like what's it called? Like the people who crucified Jesus were believers in God, but then when Jesus came
I don't-
around,
I don't know if that's actually true. I mean, like certainly. I mean, maybe the
because
Jews were, but I don't know if the Romans were.
so no, not the Roman, because it was like the Pharisees were the ones who were.
Yeah,
a lot
the
of them were the
Pharisees
ones
didn't actually
after-
crucify him, right? They just kind of
no, they didn't.
reported
But
him
they
to
were
the
the ones
authorities.
they were the ones trying. Yeah, they were the ones trying to get after him. They were the ones who.
But
felt
that
threatened
would be
by
like
him.
that would be like saying like if I see a crime and I report that crime to the police and then that crime gets you like the electric chair, that would be like saying I gave you the electric chair. Like no, that's not how that works, right?
Well,
I mean,
yeah,
like you
but
can
then at the
place
end of the
blame
day,
on
it was
them
the
for like
people- it was
getting
the
him in
people-
trouble.
It was the people. Yeah, sorry. It was the people who asked, like, so when Jesus got to the courts, they said, they were like, we found nothing wrong with this man. We find him innocent. But then the people were the one who wanted to stone him. So at the end of the day, it's like our sin is the one. Our sin. Like, do you believe that everybody has sinned in that sense?
No, I don't believe
what
that
do you-
sin is a real thing. So
Okay. Do you believe? Okay. How about I can go about it this way then? You're a PhD student, or
no,
you have a PhD?
I have a PhD. Yeah.
You have a PhD. Okay, my fault. And are you just like you believe facts and stuff like that? Like that?
Well, I like to think that. Yeah.
Okay, so do you believe in like the sense?
In the
So
what?
my dad brought it to me this way. So he was an atheist, and then one day, he was kind of just like thinking about it, and he saw on like some history channel or some science channel, and the guy said that it just happens to be that the only solid that floats in its own substance is water, and then if ice didn't float, then the whole world would cease to exist. And
I
so
don't
it
actually
happens
know
to
if
be
that's
that
true.
one little.
But yeah,
I
water
think it's like
is
one
pretty
of four
special in that
things.
regard.
I think it's like one of four things, but
Water
is
is pretty special in that
regard.
regard.
Yeah, and so I mean, to me, I believe that there's a God who created the universe. I don't think that the universe is God, if that's what you were saying earlier. This is
I
my
don't
first
think
time
that
coming
that's true
across your
either.
stream. Okay, and so I kind of just like felt prompted to come talk. But do you believe in or actually how about this to continue on that story? If like say water didn't float, then all the ecosystems would collapse. Correct?
Well, yeah, they
Like,
wouldn't have
if
formed
I
in the
sank-
first place, right?
Exactly. And do you think that's just some crazy coincidental like nuance that like stuff like that would happen? If that question makes sense.
No, and by the way, I don't actually know if that's true that life couldn't form if ice didn't float. The reason why ice floating is kind of necessary for life on Earth is because during winter, the Earth is far enough away from the sun that some of the water freezes, right? And so when the water freezes, if the ice didn't float, it would sink to the bottom and it would keep freezing, and then entire lakes, entire bodies of water would freeze solid rather than the ice providing an insulating layer. But if the Earth was closer to the sun, then it might just never be cold enough for it to freeze, in which case you could still have life. By the way, I can't hear you when you're teacupped. When you're off the app, I can't hear you. So if you're talking...
Sorry.
You're welcome. You're good.
I was just looking at something.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's actually... I don't think it'd be an issue for life in general if ice didn't float. It might be an issue for life on Earth, but that's just because Earth is where it is.
Okay. For me, so I'm an engineering student this year, and so I've just been kind of like getting to go through all the chemistry and physics classes. And so I grew up in a Christian household, but then I kind of fell away from it for a little, and then I kind of got drawn back to it by a friend. And as I came back into the church, I started to feel more like it felt like there was more to this life than just what the world was able to give me. And so I kind of like started like looking into it a lot more. And then as I came here as an engineering student, I get to go through physics and chemistry classes, and you get to learn about gravity, all these super small, intricate numbers that if they weren't precisely what they were, then a lot of things would not necessarily function.
A lot of things
like, say, gravity.
Things might be different if they could be different.
Exactly. Like gravity being different, like it feels like it's so perfect for us here on Earth, where it isn't on other planets.
I think you're falling into, at least to some extent, you're falling into the puddle analogy, or the puddle fallacy. I don't know if there's a name for it. But it's like a backwards causality. Like, look, so Earth has a certain gravitational pull, right?
Yeah.
And we are adapted to live in a world with that gravitational pull. If suddenly the Earth's mass doubled and its gravitational pull doubled, our legs would break. Well, they might not break, but we would have an awful hard time walking. Similarly, if the Earth's gravitational pull halved, well then I imagine that like birds would have a hard time, and life would just be generally probably more difficult. But that's just because the life on Earth developed to exist in the gravitational well of the Earth. If the Earth's gravity were different, then the life that developed on it would have been different.
Okay. Does that fall into like an evolutionary category or not necessarily?
Yeah, that would be like an evolutionary process, yeah.
All right. Have you heard of like the Drake equation?
I am familiar with it. Yeah.
Fine-tuning thing. Okay, like the
Oh,
probability.
that's not
that
fine-tuning. That's the Fermi paradox, right? It's not fine-tuning.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then like the fine-tuning. Like, do you believe that? Like, how do you think Earth happened? If you don't believe
Earth coalesced due to gravity. Like Earth was originally a whole bunch of rocks strewn out around the sun, and the gravitational pull collapsed it into a ball.
Okay. And where would you say like those rocks came from? Like for me, I feel like it's hard to pinpoint existence unless God came in as like space, time, and matter all at the same time.
Oh, you're asking where the entire universe came from, because like the whole process of
for me.
So the whole process of like planetary formation and all that stuff is super well understood.
Mm-hmm.
But the question of where the universe came from, I'm generally pretty agnostic about it, but I kind of lean towards maybe like 60-40, the universe having always existed.
You just think like it never came into creation,
Yeah.
like nothing created it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess it's hard for me to argue that if that's what you believe.
I mean, I lean towards that. Like, again, I'm pretty agnostic. Like,
Okay.
we don't really have, like, we have some evidence that at least allows for that possibility. But like, yeah, it's just generally like, I don't think you know either. I don't think Christians know. Christians will say God did it, but then not explain how.
I think
Right.
that's the faith side of it. When people say they have faith, we have to believe that there's something more outside of this, that we have like our we morally know when something's good or right because God gave us those morals. Like something's bad, like it's bad to kill somebody even though you've never necessarily done it. Like that's a bad thing, but like how do you inherently know that in that sense? Like I feel like God
I think that's
implanted these
some
morals in us.
I think that some I think that moral standards generally come from something like a mixture of environment, like where you were raised and who your parents were, and then also some genetic features as well. I mean, like there are very clearly some things that are obviously genetic, like the fear of snakes. That's a thing that's like actually, or it's either the fear of snakes or the fear of spiders. That's a thing that's like actually genetic. Like we can pinpoint where that developed evolutionarily because we can see that like other organisms have that same fear. And so like there are parts of our psychology that are absolutely genetic. And I suspect that at least like rudimentary morality, things like fairness, we see fairness appearing in other organisms as well, like the notion of fairness. These kind of very rudimentary pieces that you can use to build a foundation for morality, I think that those parts are absolutely genetic.
All right. Understood.
Anything else?
I guess I don't know. I guess the one book. Have you ever read the Bible at all?
I've read the Hebrew Bible a few times. I haven't read the entirety of the Christian Bible, but I'm working my way through it slowly.
Okay. All right. If I can encourage you to start somewhere, I would say start in the Gospels.
That's where I am.
Okay, perfect. I feel like just one more thing. I would just say like even if like you don't necessarily believe in like Christianity or God or Jesus in that sense, like do you believe that if people applied Christian morals to their life, if they applied Christian values to their life, do you think their lives would be better or worse?
It depends on the Christian morals. There is no one Christian morals. If you believe if you believe Paul, then women should shut up and not talk in church, and that's definitely not good. If you believe like if you believe like the Sermon on the Mount, then yeah, that's probably pretty good. Like it depends. Like you put 100 Christians in a room and you'll have 100 different opinions on what it means to be Christian.
That I 100% believe. Yeah, I'm still like fully like I've newly like taken it on as like I'm actually like starting to take it into its full, if that makes sense. Like I'm actually starting to like get into it and learn like what this all means. But I think the one thing I believe is that Jesus said to love everybody no matter who they are. And I feel like that's a good thing that people can live by. And I think that's a good moral thing.
Right, but that's not the only thing he said. So that's why it's contentious, right? Like what it means to live by Christian morals. He also said that he comes to separate, mother from or father from son. He came to break apart families. He said that unless you absolutely have to, you shouldn't get married because like there's a lot of other things that he said that we wouldn't think are good. So
yeah,
he hates fig trees.
Okay, yeah. I guess there's a lot of stuff that's like that I'd have to go over the context of it all. And when I'm more well versed, hopefully I can come to you again in the future and I can be more well versed.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And we can talk again. All right,
sure thing.
I appreciate your time.
All right, take care.
All right, have a good one.
You too. All right, I'm gonna bring up Nate's. Nate says that he has mathematical proof of God. Oh shit! I clicked on the wrong person. Oh no, never mind. They disconnected. Wait, did they? Senor Poo-Poo. Senor Poo-Poo. Alright, it doesn't look like Senor Poo-Poo's connecting. Alright, I'm gonna bring up Nate's next. I just have to... There we go. Yeah, Nate says he has mathematical proof of God.
All right.
I'm going to
all right, can you hear
expect
me?
some axioms here. Nate, how's it going?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. You say you have mathematical proof of God?
Yeah. You do have to accept a couple of axioms, though.
Which
First
God are
of
we
all,
talking about, by the way?
um, look, it could be any god, but that we get into that later.
Well, I mean,
I'm
like you
just
have
gonna
to
talk about
define what a God is, right? Before you can
That's
prove
exactly
that
what
it
that's
exists.
the first axiom I wanted to bring up. I wanted to
Okay.
define
Yeah.
what
Go ahead. Fire away.
what God is. We have to agree on what God is. So, I accept God as omniscient, omnipotent being. How does that work for you?
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
Okay, so if God is an omniscient, omnipotent being, then a being that creates a virtual world is a God. Is that correct? Because he
No.
has full control, full knowledge of that universe.
That's not what omniscient and omnipotent mean.
Yeah, it's exactly what
No,
omniscient,
omniscient and omnipotent means knowing, or omniscient means knowing all true things, not all true things about a specific universe.
Yeah, but as far as the universe, as far as you know,
I don't care about
the
as far as I
universe-
know. Omniscient means knowing all true things, not just all true things about a particular universe.
the universe you're in.
So then you're just changing the definition of omniscient. If you're saying God is a being that knows all true things about a subset of things, then is that really omniscient?
It's so if you're in this universe, it's the only universe you know. You don't know the universe outside of it.
My ignorance says nothing about God's knowledge set. It's irrelevant. Omniscient is about knowing all true things, not knowing some true things, those things being all of the true things about a particular thing.
Of your reality,
That's
which is the only.
But look,
which could be representative.
This
of
is just like if by your definition of omniscient, you're talking like this would be just as like by your definition, a guy who religiously studies the GTA 5 code base is omniscient because he knows all true things about GTA 5.
So if this omniscient demon knows all things about an infinite universe, that's omniscience.
It's not. Omniscience means knowing all true things, period. Not all true things about something specific.
About the
So if
infinite
this
universe that we
being
live in.
so
universe
if this being exists in its own universe, then there are things in its universe that it might not know, in which case it wouldn't be omniscient.
Okay, so now imagine this being in this universe that we're in, and this universe is infinite, and this being is in this universe, and it knows.
Okay, so you're
everything
imagining
about
that there's a being in our universe, and you're also
Yes.
supposing that the universe is infinite. Okay, what next?
Yes, and this being has complete control over this universe and
Sure.
knows everything about this universe. It's omniscient and omnipotent.
I don't.
being
I
is
mean, I don't think that that's. If that's what you mean by omniscient, omnipotent, sure, but that's not what theists believe. But okay, continue. You're just using them in a, ad hoc, not ad hoc. There's another word for it. Anyway, you're using them in a personal way, but okay.
Well, I'm saying I'm using what most religions use: omniscient, omnipotent being of this universe.
Yeah, but you're using omniscient and omnipotent in a way that they do not use. You're equivocating on
exactly.
those words.
They all say this infinite universe.
They all say
created by-
that God knows all true things, not all true things about a universe.
The universe he created. That's what they're talking about.
No, they're not. I've spoken with more theists than you have. I can assure you that they mean all true things, not all true things about our universe. Anyway, but we can just grant that we can just accept those atypical definitions if you want, and you can proceed with your proof if you'd like.
Okay, so the universe being infinite is inhabited by a being that is all-knowing and all-powerful. So God. Okay. Now, he could have created this universe as a however he created it. He created it becomes a virtual universe.
So wait a minute, does this God exist in this universe?
Sure. Yeah.
So how did he create the universe?
So if I now let me use an analogy here. If I use a computer to create a virtual world, okay, and then I put on it's a high resolution world. It's hard to tell from this world, and then I put on some virtual reality goggles, and I enter.
Okay, so it doesn't. So this being doesn't originate from this universe.
How could you originate from this universe and create this universe?
That's what I was asking, and it sounded like that's what you were saying. But I'm glad that we cleared that up.
Yeah, no, so no paradoxes here. This universe is being created.
Okay, so this being created the universe from outside the universe, and then put on virtual reality goggles and came into this universe. Fine.
Yeah. So it's omniscient and omnipotent. Now you could say that's unlikely of happening, but so we've established a God.
Wait, hold on. So what do you mean we've established it? Like you've defined it, but now what's the proof that it's real?
Yeah, okay. So that's where I'm going to get to. We've established what God would, we agree on that if this
Well,
is true,
I don't actually think that's what any like genuine theist believes, but I'll entertain it. So go ahead.
Okay, so if this is possible, so in infinity, if this is possible in infinity, then the law of infinite probability states that if it is possible for happening once, then given enough time, it will occur over and over again. So this truly is the universe we live in is one of these universes and not the original.
Wait,
universe.
so if what is possible?
To create, if it's possible for a being to create a virtual universe and live in that universe.
Okay, but then you have to. So in order to then apply, it's not the law of infinite probability. In order to then apply the law of large numbers, that's what you're referring to. You would have to know something about the universe in which the creator being resides. You'd have to know that that universe is infinite, and it's possible for a being in that universe to create one, to create another universe. But we don't know anything about that universe.
Well, I mean, in this universe, we know virtual worlds exist. They're just low resolution.
Okay, what does that have to? Okay, so
So
what does that have to do with? What does that have to do with the creator of our universe's world, assuming such a thing exists?
Okay, so that already happened. So,
No. Look. So it'd be really good if you could put this in a syllogism. But the argument that you're making is essentially, if our universe is infinite, then the probability of a creator in their own universe creating a universe. Sorry, let me rephrase. Your argument is, if it's possible that a creator in their own universe can simulate our universe, and if our universe is infinite, then the probability of them creating it, of that happening, is 100%. But that's a non sequitur, because the infinite size of our universe says nothing about the size of the simulator's universe. And so if the simulator's universe is not infinite, then even if it's possible for them to simulate a universe, it doesn't mean that it will happen.
If our universe is infinite, so
the size of our universe is irrelevant because that's not where the creator is doing the creating.
Well, no, it is relevant because if the size of this universe is infinite, it cannot be contained by a finite universe. So the universe containing an infinite universe.
There's like a really, really deep problem. It is conceptually impossible to simulate an infinite universe.
It's
right.
I can prove that. I can't prove it, but I can deduce that it's possible to simulate a one-on-one model of an infinite universe.
No, it's not. In fact, this has been empirically shown. I can refer you to a paper if you're interested.
Well, let me postulate why I can deduce that it's true, because you can, and here's how it can be true. I can create if I was an omniscient or an omnipotent demon, I could create a one-to-one simulation of an infinite universe, but the universe would be rendered incomplete. It would only be observable.
Then you're not simulating the whole universe, right?
It'd be an observable universe.
So in fact, interestingly enough, this has been empirically tested as well. In any universe that's remotely like our own, it is impossible to simulate a universe that reproduces with the fidelity required what our observable universe is like. It's impossible.
There's no way we could say.
Want me to
what
cite you a
it would
resource
take
for that? Because I can.
There's no way we can. There's no human that can say what resources it would take to.
Sure, we
produce
can.
a
We can
infinite
we can
universe.
analyze the space of possible laws of physics and do an analysis. We absolutely can. And it's been done, in fact. Let me pull up the paper.
You can't say what power it would take to
Watch me.
render. You can't.
Watch
say
me.
what
I'm about to. I'm pulling up the paper. One sec. Here it is. Why is this being so slow? I really need a new computer.
Law of infinite probability. That's the mathematical proof.
Also, there is no law of infinite probability. There's a law of large numbers. That's what you were getting at. Yeah, one sec.
So that's the same law.
No, you referred to something that doesn't exist. Here we
It's
go.
otherwise known as the law of infinite probability, or the infinite monkey theorem.
It's not. Okay, here's the paper that discusses what I'm referring to. Namely, this gives a Bayesian reasoning to trust that it is impossible to simulate a universe with enough fidelity to remotely simulate our universe. Even if it's a low resolution version, impossible.
From here, I can see the problem with that is that it's self-referential.
That's one problem. But even if it's not self-referential, even if it's not simulating itself, then the amount of energy required would be more energy than you could contain in a universe, right?
But no. But I think you misunderstood the fundament of what I was saying. I was saying observably rendered, not.
Yeah. They studied that too. In fact, they studied the possibility where it's just rendering what humans see. It's just rendering the surface of the Earth at low resolution. And even that, you wouldn't be able to generate enough energy to produce such a thing.
I'm gonna have to go look this up and see.
You should.
And pick this
It's
apart.
devastating to the simulation hypothesis.
I'm gonna pick this apart and get back to you. What's it called? Astrophysical constraint and simulation hypothesis. All right. I'll research this and pick it apart and get back to you.
I'm sure you will. Anything else?
That's it. Talk to you later.
All right, take care.
Bye.
IC Spin with the $2. Thank you. It is an argument from incredulity. And Sloppy Jones with $1 earlier. Thank you so much. Yeah, the paper is entitled Astrophysical Constraints on the... I'll just put it back up again. Rexies, you came up to Rexies to get Rexies again?
Yo, what's up, bro?
Did you come up to get Rexies again?
Yeah, I got some questions for you, bro.
Sure, fire away.
All right. So, what do you think that?
By the way, just
universe
remind
is
me, what god do you believe in?
I believe in a god, but not like a specific god.
What properties does this god have?
I would say that he's pretty much non-dependent of a physical universe. Basically, like.
Does it have a mind?
Not in a. I guess you could say not in the sense that we have a mind.
So,
maybe.
in what sense does it have a mind?
Well, I think it would be like it's like independent of any like of any physical existence.
Okay, that's not explaining what sense it has a mind in. So,
like
it sounds like you think that it has a mind, but it's not at all like the mind that we know. So, what is it like?
I guess it could have a mind, but like not a physical mind.
Sure, maybe
I'm
maybe the
not
mind
sure.
isn't attached to a brain, but it still has a mind, right? Like it has mental states. It might have thoughts.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure. And did this being
So-
create the universe?
Yeah, I think so. Because of like you know contingency, right?
I'm familiar with contingency, yeah.
So basically, like everything that we observe is contingent, right?
Why?
Well, that's because we observe everything depends off something else in order to like exists.
Yeah, but if each dependency relationship is necessary and the thing that it depends on is also necessary, then the dependency relation implies that the effect is necessary as well. Like if A is necessary and if A implies B is necessary, then B is necessary.
Right. So
I don't see the debunk on. I don't see how you can debunk necessitarianism.
well, what do you think about like infinite regress?
What about it?
Like why does the universe exist at all? Like, you know, like why does
It
it
might
need
be
a
a brute
reason for it
fact.
to exist?
It might be a brute fact. It might be necessary for a universe to exist by some principle. I don't think anybody really knows.
So like why doesn't it exist, you know, like basically. Like why doesn't it exist?
I don't know. I don't understand what that question means.
Like there could be as much reason for it to exist as for it to not exist. So,
Yeah, my point is I don't think anybody has an answer to that question. Whether you're a theist or an atheist, I don't think anybody has an answer to that question.
so that means that there's a possibility that God is real, and
Well, I mean, maybe some notion of some sort of something that caused the universe to exist, but why does that have to be a being with a mind?
because in order for like a contingent universe to exist, you need something.
There you go,
That's-
asserting that that the universe is contingent again.
It is contingent though.
Prove it.
As far as we can observe,
Prove
it's
it.
contingent.
How do you
the
figure?
cycles of nature.
Yeah, how do you know that they could have been another way?
How could it have been another way?
Yeah, can you prove that it could have been another way?
No, I guess not, right?
So then how do you know it could have been different?
Because why not?
Just because something is logically possible does not mean that it's metaphysically possible or physically possible. So logically possible is not sufficient for to prove contingency. Like, it's logically possible that a god doesn't exist. That doesn't mean that, in your view, God is contingent.
Well, he's not. He's not. He's in contingent.
Right, but it's logically possible that God doesn't exist. Right?
No, it's not logically
Oh, okay.
possible.
So if you're gonna claim it's impossible for God to not exist, then you better come with a strong proof of that. Because that's a really strong claim. To claim that something is not logically possible means that you better have a proof that it runs into a contradiction.
Right, because it doesn't answer like the question of like an infinite universe.
Not
that's standing
answering
on
a question
itself.
doesn't make it logically impossible. In order to
Well,
have a
it's okay,
logical
but like you
impossibility,
said-
you have to derive a contradiction.
A contradiction.
Yeah.
Oh man, like okay. I mean, like, so how does the universe like sustain itself? I just don't get it.
What do you, I don't know what you mean by sustain itself. The universe exists. Why does it need to be sustained?
Like it doesn't have an initial cause. Like
Could be. It could have always existed, sure.
so there's never going to be an answer why. It's just
There
gonna
might be,
keep
or there
going
might
and
not be.
going.
We don't know. This is potentially an empirical question, and people are studying, like, there's a reason why people study, like, the foundations of physics. People study, like, the foundations of quantum mechanics. People study, like, early universe cosmology to try to understand what's going on. Maybe it's an empirical question, maybe it's not. But just saying, well, you don't have an answer, that doesn't justify your position.
Well, it's just saying like you don't have an answer either. Like
I never claimed to have an
Yeah.
answer. I literally said, I don't think anyone has an answer. You're the one claiming to have an answer.
I mean, from my observation, it's like, you know, like doesn't the universe need something separate with like away from itself, like
Why?
in order for well, because otherwise there would not be an answer. Like that's
Yeah,
what I
maybe
keep
maybe there's not an answer, or maybe we'll never know the answer.
How is that even possible?
Why do you think that there needs to be an answer?
I mean, it's just why? Because like things could easily not exist
Could they?
just as well as they do
Maybe
exist,
they had to
so-
exist. Maybe they couldn't have not existed.
Right. So but it does though.
No, maybe it had to exist. Maybe it couldn't have not existed.
It couldn't have not existed.
Maybe
That wouldn't-
nothing. Maybe nothingness is impossible, and so there must have always been something.
Why would nothingness be impossible?
I don't know.
You
It seems
like-
it seems at least plausible. I mean, like nothing is a pretty pretty slippery philosophical notion. Perhaps it's impossible for nothing to truly exist.
Right, because you said that like we live in a chaotic system, right? So like
When did I say that? We
well,
do, but I
yeah,
didn't
you
say
said
that to you.
Yeah, you said that. That was the whole argument last time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so like if it's a chaotic system, like things could easily just go go astray and like
That's a weird assertion. Why would you say that things could easily just be another way?
because it's chaotic nature.
Just because it's chaotic doesn't mean that things could just be another way. Like it sounds like and with with this what am I trying to say? You're being very cordial and I appreciate that. So like I will be cordial too. The things that you're saying are just not connected to one another. Like you're just asserting things and then moving on to another thing and then asserting a different thing, but without ever justifying anything.
Well, you said that the universe is not. Well, do you think so? You don't think the universe is contingent?
No, I'm just saying that you haven't demonstrated that it is.
Well, I mean, don't you think that like we observe like something depends off of something else, like right?
Dependency doesn't imply contingency. The dependency only implies contingency when either the cause of the dependency is itself contingent or when the dependency relation itself is contingent.
What? Wait, can you like explain that a little bit more?
Yes. So if A is necessary and the dependency relation A implies B is also necessary, then B is necessary even though B depends on A.
Right. So isn't that how the universe works?
Yeah, but that's consistent with everything being necessary.
So why like I don't think a universe like that is like sustainable.
Again, completely unsubstantiated assertion. Why?
Because then that would mean like there would like it would just keep going like
yes,
like,
the universe would behave the universe would behave necessarily the way that it's behaving.
That just goes back to like okay, like it could easily not exist. Like why?
Could it?
Why?
If the universe is necessary, then it couldn't have not existed.
Like why does something exist rather than nothing?
If the universe is necessary, then the universe had to exist. That would explain why the universe exists rather than not existing, because the universe would be necessary.
Necessary for what? Like why? Why?
Necessary as a property of its ontology, not necessary for some purpose.
Necessary for what? For its purpose?
No, necessary as a property of its ontology, not necessary for some purpose. Thank you for the chicken. By the way, we can all hear your rooster in the background, just saying.
Oh, yeah, sorry. But, like, yeah, okay. Oh, Jesus. I mean, man, it's just never an answer. There's never... It's going to go on forever.
You're right,
in this
you're right.
answer.
There isn't a definitive answer, but that doesn't mean that you should be like, I don't know what the answer is. It must be God.
I mean... If we're in a contingent universe, but you said that there's no basis for contingency.
I mean, unless you have some reputation of necessitarianism.
What about like the cycles of nature?
What is that? How is that a reputation of necessitarianism? What is going on in your background? Are the chickens like? Is a police officer arresting a chicken?
I'm in the back. I'm in the backyard.
What? It can't be earlier than noon where you are. Why are the roosters cawing? It's not morning.
He does that. Every time I get like on the phone, he does that.
Have you ever considered having a
he just
chicken dinner?
Oh yeah, dude. We eat chicken all the time.
Well, maybe tonight's the night.
I know, right? Man. Yeah, but yeah, that was my question. I mean, it's just like why does it exist? Why something exists instead of nothing?
It's a good question. It's a question that it's okay to have that question, but it's not okay to assume you know the answer to it unless you actually do know the answer to it. But it doesn't seem like you do.
Well, I mean, in order for the universe to exist, as it's contingent, like in it,
That's
has a
an assertion.
beginning,
How do you know it's contingent?
well, because as far as we can observe, something depends off of something else. Like,
Dependency doesn't imply contingency.
how?
I've explained this to you
just
twice now. If
Yeah, but
the antecedent cause, the thing that it's dependent on, is itself necessary, and the causal relationship is also necessary, then the effect is necessary. Because it couldn't have been any other way.
it couldn't have been any other way. What? It just doesn't make sense.
That's what
to me.
necessary. Okay, I'll walk you through this. Let's say that, hypothetically, let's say that it's necessary that, I don't know, that the sky is blue, right? Suppose that that's necessary. It's not, but like it's not in like a standard understanding. But let's suppose that it is, right? And then let's also suppose that whenever the sky is blue, the ocean is blue, right? So it's necessary that the sky is blue, and also it's necessarily true that whenever the sky is blue, the ocean is blue. Then it follows that it's necessary that the ocean is blue, even though the ocean's blueness depends on the sky's blueness. It's still necessary that the ocean is blue because the cause, the blueness of the sky, and the relationship, if the sky is blue, the ocean is blue, both of those things are necessary. So it necessarily follows that the ocean must be blue. By the way, that's not why water is blue. It's not why water is blue, but it's just for the sake of the hypothetical.
Like you can just ask, like, what made the sky blue?
It might be
on and on.
In the hypothetical, it's necessary that the sky is blue.
It's necessary. What? Okay, but like that would just go on and on, dude.
No, if it's necessary, it doesn't need an explanation. It might have an explanation, but it doesn't need one.
Wow. Ow. You kind of like, oh man, you always confuse me with that. But I guess so.
It's just a piece of advice. Before you make a contingency argument, go actually learn what necessity and contingency mean, because it doesn't sound like you know what they mean.
Right.
Because
like,
I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying
saying
anything groundbreaking. I'm not saying anything that's like not mainstream philosophy. This is just like definitions of words.
Like, because you said if it's necessary, but why would it need to be?
It's a
necessary at
hypothetical.
all?
It's a hypothetical.
Yeah. Man. It just keeps going. Like you could just keep asking questions.
Okay.
You know,
do you
like
believe that God is necessary?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. Why?
Because this whole universe like needs something
Why?
separate from itself.
Why?
Because otherwise it would just keep going on, and then like
Why?
it could easily just not exist.
Why?
That's what I'm saying. It could easily not exist as well
Why?
as it does. Exactly. That's the question. You never answer it.
Why does
In
God
an
exist?
infinite-
Why does God exist?
Because because in a system that's dependent of on something else, you know, he could be necessary, bro. Because like, you know.
Yeah, but why does he
dependent on
exist?
anything.
He could just not exist.
Because it's not dependent on anything else. Like it's not.
Yeah,
Dependent
he could. So
on the-
necessity or contingency and dependency are not the same thing. You should get that out of your head because it's philosophically incorrect.
That's what I'm confused about because
Okay,
like I don't
then
think your
you are
explanation is
confused.
sufficient.
I
You know?
agree.
Yeah.
That's just not what contingency means. It's not what necessity means.
I don't think like that your explanation is like
Necessity means that it could, or contingency rather, means that it is metaphysically possible that it could have been different. That's all contingency means. It doesn't say anything
right.
about dependency.
Right. So Jesus, that's tough. That's tough. I just don't know why there would be a reason if you know like like I'm just confused, I guess. But yeah, I mean that was just my question.
Okay. Thanks for being here, Rexies.
All right, dude.
Take care. I think, do we have a guest from... Yeah, we do have a guest from YouTube. Let's bring up a YouTube guest. By the way, if you want to support me, there's a few ways to do it. You can obviously support me financially. That's always acceptable. But there's also, you can like the live. If we get to 100k likes on TikTok or 200 likes on YouTube, I will put my hair down. And that's always a thing that people like to see. All right, let's bring up Roko. Roko, welcome back.
What's up, man? I'm at work.
That's good. Are you able to talk?
Yeah, chilling.
Are you a minion for work?
Face that. No, I just wear this thing because it hides my AirPods so the boss doesn't,
Ah, okay. All right, so what God do you believe in?
Oh, the Christian guy.
Okay. And why?
I like to go about this through the transcendental argument for God because I just think that's the
okay.
strongest proof we have.
So, I mean, we can do this, but keep in mind...
So,
so I just want to preface this by saying, just so you don't get your expectations too high. One, no philosophers, no modern philosophers take it seriously. And second, even if the transcendental argument is a good argument, it's never convincing to atheists because it presupposes the thing that atheists don't believe in. But if you want to run it, you can.
well, I think that's on the fault of the atheists. I mean, what is it presupposing that the atheists don't believe in?
It presupposes the existence of God. So in order for an argument to be convincing to somebody, they have to agree to the premises, and then they logically must agree to the conclusions, right? But if they don't accept the first premise that God exists, why would they accept the conclusion that God exists?
Well, the God existing is not the first premise of the
Okay,
argument.
so run the argument then. Maybe you're running a different maybe you're running a different version of tag.
So the first premise would be that you can't have knowledge or logic without God. So it's
okay. Why would I accept that?
Because it's saying that there's you can't prove what knowledge or logic is outside of the worldview of the Christian God.
Okay, and what's your defense of that premise?
I mean, it's self-evident that I think there's a necessary.
So to be clear, if you're making a statement that something is self-evident and then somebody else disagrees with it, it's not self-evident.
How so?
Well, I disagree with your premise, so it's clearly not self-evident to me, so defend the premise.
Okay, you can't. How are you able to question the premise without the use of logic, which is necessary?
I'm not questioning the premise. I'm not convinced by it, so I'm asking you to defend the premise.
But well, that is a question. If you're denying it,
a question isn't an argument.
Truth.
Well, yeah, you're making an argument. It's your responsibility to defend the premise. That's how arguments work. If I didn't look, okay. if I ran in reverse, I would just say, well, premise one, you can't have knowledge unless you're an atheist, or premise 1, you can't have knowledge unless God doesn't exist. And then you would say, oh, well, I don't believe you. And I would say, oh, well, it's self-evident. Like, see how that's, like, ridiculous? You have to defend the argument. You have to defend the premise.
Okay.
Provide a justification.
I see what you're saying. I'm saying that there's no possibility for justification without God.
Okay, so can you justify that statement?
You can't say that there's, well, you can't even question if there's a justification without God.
Why should I believe that?
Because the statement is that you can't believe anything. There's no
I know what the statement is. I know what the statement is. I don't believe that statement. So, like, if I reject that statement, then I think that there is a possibility in order to do that, or at least I think it's possible that there's a possibility.
Well, how can you reject it is my question.
Because I don't believe it. I don't think it's true. That's how.
But that takes logic. It takes it takes
and because I don't
saying that there is no logic without that.
Right, but that's the claim. Because I don't think it's true, I don't think that you can only have logic through God. I think that you could plausibly have logic in other ways. So it's totally fine on my worldview to reject it and to even think about things logically, because I think that there are other ways to have logic beyond just God. So, let alone a Christian God. So, like, can you defend the premise? Because otherwise, you don't have an argument. If you can't defend the premise, then
Oh well. I guess not at this moment.
I'll give you a hint. No pre-suppers can. They all get stuck here.
Okay.
Like, this is the thing.
How?
They get stuck here. They just try to say, oh, well, you can't have logic without God. And I'm like, okay, what if I don't accept that as true? Then they'll be like, oh, but you can. And I'm like, well, I don't accept it as true. And they'll be like, oh, but you have to. And they never actually can offer an explanation or a justification for why I should accept it as true. They just kind of say it without justifying anything. It's circular.
Well, then you have to accept something as true.
Yeah, I accept that. I accept plenty of things as true.
So then how do you know what's true and what's not true? What justification do you have to accept truth?
I have a pluralistic approach towards truth. I think that there are some epistemological, I think that there are some ways that we can come to truth through, like, empiricism. I think that there are some ways that we can come to truth through a variety of things, but I don't have, like, some complete theory of truth. But regardless of what my theory of truth is, even if my theory of truth is incorrect, that doesn't justify yours.
Well, that's later. The justification for the truth of the Christian God comes later.
No, I'm not talking about the truth of the Christian God. I'm talking about the truth of the statement that you can only have logic through the Christian God. Like, just because even if I don't have a good grounding for my logic, that doesn't mean that your argument or that your premise is true. I could be a completely delusional idiot, and that still wouldn't make your premise true.
Yeah, but that would make the whole point of you even doing this, like, kind of silly. Like,
well, no, I could be mistaken. I could have some notion. I take, for example, the possibility that I have some justification for thinking that I can justify logic, right? Perhaps maybe I say, like, Platonism or something like that, right? Suppose I say that. I could be wrong, but I would still be doing it. I would still be doing the thing. Now, if you want to try to prove every single possible justification wrong, by all means, go ahead. But disproving one possible justification doesn't prove yours correct.
I see what you're saying there, and I would agree with that. I don't think, disproving one would just disprove all. I mean, that doesn't make sense.
And so if you want to justify your first premise, there's basically two options. The first one is you can provide a direct proof that, given some premises that I accept, the conclusion follows, and the conclusion is the first premise of your argument. That's one way to do it. The second is you could do a proof by contradiction, where you suppose that any other justification method is true, and then you prove that that's impossible. So you either have to disprove all of the infinity of the other possible justifications, or you have to actually prove that yours is true rather than disproving all of the other ones.
I don't think there's an infinite number of other justifications.
I mean, there is, because you can always just add one thing to your ontology, and then that'll be a different justification.
Okay. This is the first time I ever like been on like a live or whatever, so
You're good.
I appreciate you for putting me on and all that, and kind of walking with me through it, but
You're good. You're good.
I'm still kind of, I guess I'm just thinking through it still, and I just wanted to, talk it out with someone and see how and where it would go.
Well, this is a good place to be, all things considered. A lot of atheists are a lot meaner than I am.
All right.
Anything else you want to talk about?
I don't know. Well, I don't see where I got lost there, but I guess I'll have to just figure it out.
Okay. Well, good luck with that, okay?
Yeah, I appreciate you, man.
All right. Have a good one.
Yeah.
I need to come up with a precept parody that I can run against people who run precept, just for the lulz. All right, let's bring up another guest. We have... Let's bring up Zachary Wolf. Yeah, Ian will be meaner. Ian is absolutely meaner than me. Ian's a lovely person, but absolutely meaner. Zachary, how's it going?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
I can.
Great. What god do you believe in?
Say again?
What god do you believe in?
Christian.
Okay. And what's your
But
best
I
argument
also
for the Christian
studied-
god?
I also studied physics.
Okay, cool. What's your best
Now, I
argument
don't
for the
have my
existence of the
doctorate.
Christian god?
I don't have my doctorate, but
Okay, what's your best argument for the existence of a Christian god?
well, first.
By the
I would
way,
like
is
to
James Earl Jones reading a passage from Shakespeare behind you?
Well, technically no, but let me mute it.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry about that.
You're good. All right. Anyway, what was your what was your best argument?
Well, studying physics, we understand that we don't have all the answers.
Yep, that's true.
And this is not going to be much of an argument, but what I can tell you is the experience I've had in my life.
Okay, so I'm going to warn you. If you want to tell a story, you can, but I can give you 100% surety that it will not be convincing to me or to anybody who's watching. Personal
Understood.
experiences are the least convincing thing that you can ever give to someone who doesn't share your belief.
That's fair. But the question I wanted to pose is, given the fact we don't know everything, how can you make an argument against it?
We don't know that. Thank you. We don't know that there isn't an invisible, omniscient teapot that's orbiting Jupiter, or that there isn't such a thing. But neither you nor I believe in it.
Well, that's fair. On the flip side, what I would say is, like LIGO, what was it, 2013? That Einstein predicted?
I think it was 2015, but yeah, sure. What about it?
Well, we only a few years ago discovered that gravitational waves were a thing.
Well, I mean, we kind of knew that they were a thing since the 30s, or maybe the 40s.
Well, I know because
but like
Einstein-
we just didn't detect them. Yeah, like everybody believed in them, right?
So what I'm saying is it not possible to entertain the idea that we don't understand everything, and is it not possible there could be a greater creation or God?
I mean, it's possible that there's like super advanced aliens that like created life on Earth, but it's absolute. But there are like logical contradictions with certain notions of God, and this is included on Christianity, by the way. Like the Christian God has logical contradictions built in if you believe the Bible.
And by the way, I'm an Orthodox Christian, and I do not believe the Bible is actually literal.
That's fine, but do you believe that God knows all things?
Well, what I'm getting at is, I don't think we understand enough.
That wasn't my question. Do you believe that God knows all things?
I'm not sure.
Okay, well then, that's part of like the Christian dogma that God knows all things, that God is all power or all knowing. Do you believe that God has all powers? That he is all powerful?
Frankly, I don't know.
Do you believe that God loves us?
Well, if you've read the Bible, not that I'm not implying anything by that. Certainly doesn't sound like it.
So it doesn't sound like you're a Christian.
Well, I like to think of myself more pragmatic.
I mean, you don't think that God knows everything. You don't think that God can do everything. You don't think that he loves us. That's not Christian.
Not in the way that evangelist would say it, no.
Not in the way, not in what way do you think that any of those things are true then? Because that's, I mean, like, look, welcome to the dark side, I guess. But like, if that's what you think and Christianity is true, you're going to hell with me.
Yeah.
And I guess I'll see you there. Or not.
Fair enough. I have to get off here. I have something to do.
All right, Zachary. Take care.
You too, sir. Thank you.
All right. Let's bring up another guest. Remember to like the live, y'all. Share it with as many people as you want. Like it on TikTok, on YouTube, wherever you might be. Make sure to like the live. Come on, trying to bring up the next guest. And if you want to support me, like there's a bunch of ways to do it. Like there's obviously on like YouTube super chats, there's gifts on TikTok. Oh, we have some super chats to go through. We have from Icy Spin, this sounds like an argument from incredulity. We have from Ryan Dandrith. Or Danroth, presupposes the real universe is the same power generation and limitations, no? It does, but that's where we get the justification for the simulation to begin with. And then from Icy Spin again, $2, can your guest explain who created God? Thank you guys so much for the support. I appreciate you a lot. And they were boys, and they were kissing. You guys know that meme, right? I'm not being weird. All right, let's bring up Scott. All right, Scott. Is Scott coming up? Scott, how's it going?
Good morning. Good afternoon. Excuse me.
How's it going?
Well, how are you?
I'm okay. What God do you believe in?
I was raised Presbyterian. I'm Christian.
Okay. And what is your best argument for the existence of the Christian God?
Well, I'd have to ask you a question before we proceed.
Okay, I guess. That's fine.
Do you want to believe?
If it's true, yeah.
Okay. Then I'd go back to how they taught me as a child. I basically, Wheel of Fortune, I'd like to buy another O. God is good. I believe in the idea of a universal good.
But If I don't believe in God, why would I believe that God is good?
Well, do you believe in the idea of good?
I think that there are good things and bad things and neutral things.
Okay, you're avoiding the question. Do you believe in good?
Well, I believe that there are good things. I don't know what it means for good to exist on its own.
Okay, so that's probably where we diverge a little bit.
Well, then what do you mean by good? Maybe you can explain
I believe that within all of us, there is goodness and light.
Well, I agree that there is goodness in most people. Not everybody, but I believe that there's goodness in most people. Good qualities. I believe that there's also probably bad qualities in most people. I don't know what you mean by saying that there's light in us.
The enlightenment, the logic, the ability to see beyond just hunter-gatherer imagination.
Okay, sure. I agree that we all have imagination. We all have like this ability to think beyond like the things right in front of us. Absolutely, I agree with you on those things.
Okay. Well, then that's our duty as a Christian, is to seek the good and avoid the evil.
You still haven't told me what the good means, though.
Well, again, that's more something you have to figure out on your own.
Then why'd you come
What
up?
is good? What is bad? If you don't know what good is, I can't lead.
I know
you
what
to
good
that.
things are.
That again,
I don't know what, like.
Okay,
Can you define?
Give
Can
me
you
an
define it
example.
for me?
Give me an example. No, give me an example.
A good
you
thing.
Give me an example of a couple of good things.
A good thing would be lying to the Nazis when they ask you if you're hiding Anne Frank in your basement. That would be a good thing.
Okay. That's arguably a sin at the same time.
Well, I don't think that sins are real, so.
That's minimizing a bad because you've told a falsehood.
I think that sometimes it's good to tell a falsehood.
So I'm going to come back to it. Do you want to believe?
If it's true, absolutely. If it's not true, no.
Okay. Can I tell a story? Can I steal it alive for 60 seconds?
Are you going to tell a personal story?
More of a parable.
You get 30.
Okay, I'll try. Once there was a man who knew where there was a good apple tree, and it was far away from his home. He ran to the apple tree, and when he got there, he was going to pick his apples, and he saw a horse. He walked up to the horse and said, "Hello, horse. How are you today?" The horse looked at him and said, "I'm thirsty. Do you know where there's good water?" And looked at him for a moment and said, "Yes, there's some very good water. It's about half a day's walk from here. You look pretty exhausted. You look kind of hungry. Do you want to go get the water, or would you like me to? No, I'm exhausted and I really need the water. Please lead me to good water." So the man said, "Okay, led him to the water." And throughout the day, the horse was getting tireder and tireder and more exhausted. But whenever the man stopped and said, "Horse, you look exhausted. You want to stop? You want to eat something? What do you need? What do you need from me?" All the horse said was, "I need you to lead me to water."
All right, that's your time. Okay, so what was the purpose of your story?
The purpose of the story was once they got to the water, the horse looked at the man and said, "But I was hungry, and you led me from the tree."
Okay, what's the purpose of the story, not what's the conclusion of the story?
The purpose of the story is to say, if you are not being honest in your question, it would actually damage you for me to
Okay, well, I am
continue this
being honest,
conversation.
so it seems irrelevant. Oh, he left. Okay, weird. That was weird. Let's bring up another guest. I don't know if that was an accident or not, but definitely weird timing. All right, let's bring up EK Men. EK, how's it going?
Hi, it's going well. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. What god do you believe in?
I believe in something like the pseudo Dionysius's god, the
I have
sort
no
of
idea what that is.
apophatic god beyond god beyond description, the god who is nothing like creation. It's a sort of esoteric Christian.
Okay, so what properties does this thing have?
So honestly, pseudo Dionysius could be looked at as someone who is trying to it's almost a literary style. Is belief going off the existing assertions at the time within Christianity that God was nothing like creation, that God was something beyond creation. He looked for a way to describe the indescribable, primarily through negation, negative theology. So essentially, any qualities that could be ascribed to something created or observed would not be qualities that God would have.
But you don't know any actual qualities of the thing that you believe in?
So the attempt is that the qualities are derived through negation, essentially. If
that were true, then you could just name the properties, right? You could just say he is not this, and therefore he is the negation of it. Like if he was, is he evil? Then no, then he is not evil. We have things that are we have things that are like true dichotomies. So we could say like, is he if you take weak and strong to be truly dichotomous, then you could say, is he not weak? Well, then he must be strong. So you could have positive properties.
The idea being that we are bound to those binaries and those descriptions by being created beings, by being material beings. We think of things in those terms. But if something...
Wait, are you saying that true dichotomies are not actually dichotomous for God?
What's that?
Are you saying that true dichotomies are not actually dichotomous for God?
True dichotomies would be something that was of creation, yeah. Okay,
so you're just saying, oh, the law of the excluded middle just doesn't apply to God?
You're talking about like what is it? The law of gaps thing? I forget the term.
No, law of the excluded middle.
So
the law of the excluded middle means that if something is not false, then it is true.
If something is not false, then it is true. Yeah, because that would be something that was again that we would be able to discern by being rational beings and created beings.
Right. So you reject one of the three foundational laws of logic, then, yeah?
What's that?
So then you're suggesting that the God that you believe in is not does not have to adhere to the foundational laws of logic that we use to deduce rational inferences?
Well, he would have to, because everything that we can infer and everything that we can observe is contingent on something previously. This is the most rational way to look at the...
Okay, but then you can't rationally form an argument to defend the existence of such a thing. If it's not subject to the law, to the laws that guide or that determine rational discourse, then you can't rationally believe in the thing.
Well, so if Avicenna, Ibn Sina had this whole argument about how everything in observable reality is contingent upon something else, right?
That's a claim that would have to be supported, of course.
What's that?
That's a claim that would have to be supported, of course.
Well, yeah, it's...
But to be clear, before we move on to the contingency argument, which perhaps we can in a minute, the point is that if you're saying that God is not subject to various, logical rules that we've determined are the way that you rationally come to conclusions, they're the rules of valid inference, then that means that you cannot validly infer that God exists using rational examinations, right?
Oh man, it is
like for example, let me give you a simpler example. Suppose I believe in something that is both suppose I believe in something that is what would be a good example? Something that is both maximally small and also maximally large, or rather, no. Let's say suppose I believe in something that is that weighs 1 kilogram and it also doesn't weigh 1 kilogram.
Okay.
And then I also say, well, then you might say, well, that's irrational. That breaks one of the foundational laws of valid inference, namely the law of non-contradiction. And then I would say, well, the law of non-contradiction doesn't apply to it. Well, then I have, if I'm saying that there exists something for which the way that we validly deduce inferences just doesn't apply, then how can I use those methods to validly deduce that the thing exists?
To be fair, this is a very valid problem. It's sort of the literary problem that the apophatics ran into as a movement, and the one that I continue to run into. It's so.
This is like, to be clear, this is a defeater for this claim. This is a defeater for this claim.
Regress, right? So we in a materialistic world, if we observe things to be contingent on other things, then we can
So we can move on to contingency, but I just want to make it super clear. The position that you're holding is as like essentially admitted by you is not rational to hold, because it cannot be rationally deduced in a valid inferential way. We can talk about the reason why you believe it, but I would suggest adjusting your position so that you don't have to throw away one of the foundational laws of logic.
Reasonable and heard. Okay. So I hear you on that being a reason to address my beliefs, but I can tell you the thing that I'm trying to solve for by disregarding a rational supposition.
Sure, go ahead.
The thing that I'm trying to solve for is that, from my perspective, and you might have a really strong argument against this, and I would like to hear it. From my perspective, at least the argument that I've heard previously against infinite regress is that we run into infinite regress with contingency, whether we're looking at a theistic system or a non-theistic system, right? We run into the problem of we can extend eternally backwards, and that creates issues with beginnings. You just go further and further back, and you can logically extend that.
What are the issues there?
What's that?
What's the issue?
Infinite regress?
Yeah, what's the issue?
The issue being that, to me, that is equally a faith claim as for there to be an originator being. The argument that I've heard is that people would rather believe in something that they perceive to be one step removed, right? So we perceive things to be contingent upon other things. It is rational then to think that this has always been the case. To be
clear, hold on. That's an assertion. I don't know why I would believe that.
That's at least the argument that I've heard previously from other sort of like materialist atheists. I don't aim to make claims about what you do and do not believe. I
mean, like if I don't grant that everything is contingent, then does the argument still work?
If you don't grant that everything is contingent?
Yeah.
Well, okay, then do you think that not everything is contingent?
I think it's at least possible that the universe is necessary. And I think it's like, I haven't ruled out the case that I think it's possible that like the universe in one form or another is necessary, and it might even be possible that the universe as a whole is necessary, and all moments in time, all events, and so on.
Well, wouldn't the okay? So now we're having these conversations as beings who are capable of observing, at least within our understanding of what observation is. I assume and know of myself that I'm a being capable of observing.
Yep.
As
I agree.
Beings capable of cool. As beings capable of observing, is it not sort of equally rational if we're going off that and we observe the universe to at least be necessary, if not contingent, that if it is necessary and not contingent, that there is an inevitable start point of some kind that is incepted from something, and previous to that there was nothing.
That doesn't follow, though. It could be necessary and it could have always existed. In fact, I think that if it's necessary, it must have always existed, at least in some form. There's some ways that you can have like a finite past, but still never have nothing. That is a thing that you can at least conceptualize, but yeah, I mean, it's not contradict. It doesn't contradict. Like you can have an infinite past and also have a necessary existence.
I'm sorry, that feels like a faith claim. Do you have any like people who have made that argument successfully that I could?
Sorry,
read or
which claim seems like a faith claim?
It seems like a faith claim that something could the latter part of your most recent statement, that something could be both necessary and not universally contingent.
Well, if something is necessary, by definition, it's not contingent.
I'm sorry, could you rephrase that?
Yeah, so the definition of necessary is not contingent.
Okay.
That's just what the word means in this context anyway. So was that the question?
I apologize. I'm a little sleep deprived. I'm having I'm just wrapping my brain around definitions here a little bit. I apologize. So okay, all right. If it's necessary, but not if it being necessary means not contingent, then what's the predicted inception point? Is that the inception point being prior to that absolutely nothing?
Well, no. So there are ways that you can have, and it's really complicated. I can go into the details, but I don't know if it's relevant. So the kind of whatever things that are necessary generally are conceived to be things that have always existed. There was never a time where it didn't exist because it's necessary. However, time is a weird thing, and so it's at least plausible. Like there are some like reasonable models that propose a necessary universe that still has a finite past. We can go into the details. I can just name drop who came up with this idea, but the point is that it could have a finite past, but typically most people imagine necessary things to have always existed.
I would love a name drop just for my own reading, if that's
Yeah,
cool.
so it was Stephen Hawking and John. I think is it John or David Hurdle? I can never remember.
Okay.
Is it? I'm just gonna get the name for you. James Hurdle. Sorry. Yeah, it was James Hurdle and Stephen Hawking. They have this Hurdle-Hawking state, which is a conception of the universe that has a finite past, but never didn't exist.
I have read Zero Hawking, which I feel is a enormous failure on my part, as someone who wants to argue against this stuff. But that's beside the point. Okay. So, regardless, I think that I have further reading to do, but my position has not shifted, and that's broadly because I'm making a faith claim, and I'm fully aware of that, and my it is based on faith, and I do think that faith is fundamentally important to me as a function, and I do also know that that is not rational. However, that's sort of the baseline factor of faith, the defining feature of faith, is that it's not rational and that it is capable of being incorrect, sort of the definition of faith. So regardless, my argument for people believing in God in general is that it seems to be a benevolent human faculty for many people to...
I might agree with you that it is good for some people to believe in a God, or maybe that it's socially useful. It's not the topic of conversation, though.
Sure, fair enough.
Anything else they want to talk about?
What's that?
Anything else?
No, that's pretty sufficient for me. I'm I'm a little sleep deprived, and I think I'm going to be heading right to bed after this.
Go take a nap,
thank
bud.
you for a good conversation.
All right, take care. With the Australian $5 from Lou, thank you so much. Blitz FTW. FTW Blitz indeed. I don't want to toot my own horn, but Lou does. All right, let's bring up a next guest. All right. There was somebody in the YouTube comments who was being particularly egregious, and I feel like we should bring them up. What was their name? Is it Christopher? Christopher Ertel. Do you want to come up? If you want to come up, I will bring you up right now. If not, I understand the fear because it's a lot easier to hide behind a chat box than it is to actually come up and have a discussion in front of. Well, okay. Look, I'm not gonna be mean to you. There's like 700 people here, like watching. So like if you have stage fright, I can understand that. I'm not gonna hold that against you. But if you don't have stage fright and the only reason you don't want to come up is because you're a coward, well, you know, then you got something to stand on. We'll give him another minute. Christopher, Eve just linked it. It's also on the screen in front of your face, and it's in the description. Yeah, it's literally above my head. It's also in the description of the YouTube chat. It's also, somebody just linked it in the YouTube chat twice now. Yeah, y'all, like the live, if you're whether you're watching on YouTube or on TikTok, like the live, and if we get to 200 likes on YouTube or 100,000 likes on TikTok, I will put my hair down. All right, we're still waiting on Christopher. There's no link to click. It's literally in the description. And also, just scroll up in the text that you're reading. Eve just linked it. Eve is a mod. All right. Looks like this guy's a coward. Cowardice. Cowardice. All right, let's see what else he has to say. Don't want to be creepy about the hair. Oh, look, some people like it. Some people are into that stuff. Like, look, I spent a long time growing my hair out, and I'm like, I think it's a good feature. So, you know what? Don't be weird. It's not weird. I promise. All right, I'm going to bring up somebody else because it's clear Christopher is just making excuses to not come up. So let's bring up another guest. Let's talk to Robert Bruce. Wanna. Sad trombone indeed.
Hey, Dr. Blitz, can you hear me?
Robert, how's it going?
Going well. Hey, you have a PhD, I'm assuming, right?
I do, yeah.
Is it in physics? Just take a wild guess.
Yeah. How'd
Cool.
you know?
Yeah, I have a bachelor's in physics, did a master's in electrical.
You're one of
decided to have a
those.
family. Yeah, I considered a PhD, but man, I had my child my last semester, and I was like, there's no way I can do it.
Yeah, I can understand that. So, you believe in a god?
I do believe in a God, and I didn't always. I wouldn't say atheist, I was agnostic. I feel like maybe you have a different understanding of the difference between an atheist and an agnostic, but like atheist to me is like no humility. Like you're making this claim there could not be a God, there absolutely is no God. Whereas agnostic, you have at least so a little bit more open-mindedness to there being a God potentially. Maybe you just don't see the evidence, but to say that like, oh, there's no chance there could be a God.
My position
is going
is
way too
that
far.
my position is that I've been convinced that there is no God, and I think that there's good reason to believe that there is no God.
Okay.
That's the extent.
So,
like, obviously, I could be wrong. Obviously, like, perhaps I could be convinced in the future. Perhaps the reason I was convinced was a bad reason, or the reasons I were convinced were bad reasons. But that's what I mean when I say I'm an atheist. So, which God do you believe?
That's awesome. No, that's reassuring, like relieving, because I know I've seen your stream a couple times. Like you're a smart guy, and I'm just glad to see that you're not saying like, oh, absolutely not. So that shows that you're
Flattery will get
open-minded.
you nowhere.
Yeah. So I believe in the Abrahamic God, the Christian God.
Okay.
I feel like in terms of the evidence of there being a God here on Earth, and just the evidence that exists here on Earth, it could only be the Christian God. There's no other religion or God that even comes close to having merit or just any real reason to lend.
I mean,
to lend credit.
I'm gonna maybe throw a wrench in. Throw a wrench in your view here. Generally speaking, if you actually engage with the whole swath of literature, generally speaking, Christianity, of the three Abrahamic faiths, Christianity is like the least reasonable because of the Trinity.
Okay, that's great. Why? Why the Trinity?
Because
It's funny
because
'cause I was hoping
counting is
that-
easy, it turns out, and you can't have three things also be one thing. You can't have three things that are not identical be one thing and identical. It's a direct contradiction.
Okay, so you believe in quantum mechanics. Obviously, you're a physicist, right?
Yep.
And a particle can have like two states of existence at once, right?
No, it's just in a superposition. It's not in either state.
Sure, but I guess there's evidence that it could be located in two places at one time until you.
No, but it's not. It's never located in two places at once. It's in a superposition of the two locations, but that doesn't mean that it's actually in those two positions. It's in a superposition, which is a different thing.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, well, let's just take superposition, right? And I don't want to debate physics with you. I have a bachelor's, not a PhD. I have no desire to do that. I don't want to embarrass myself.
I'll bash you over the head with my paper. Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
exactly. No, but for real though, I mean, so just even like grasping the concept of superposition, I think you're by far intelligent enough to grasp that a God could exist in multiple states at once, right? Human form and then the All-Father, Almighty form, right? That's not a stretch. I think you could comprehend that possibility. If God is who he says he is, right? Almighty, he created the universe, he exists outside of space and time. Of course he could exist, he could be omnipresent, right? And he could exist in two states.
Well, look, so there's an issue because the issue is Jesus fully God?
He's fully God, but in a reduced form, in a limited form. So it says in the scriptures that he basically emptied.
I don't mean the incarnated Jesus. I mean like the non-incarnated Jesus, the one that's hanging out in heaven or whatever.
No, so Jesus is not the Father, right? So
I understand that. Is Jesus fully God though? That's what I'm asking.
He's fully God in a limited form, if that makes sense.
No, it doesn't. If you are God, then you're not limited, right? So he can't. It's a contra. Well, presumably you don't think God can be limited, do you?
Well, why can't God put himself in the body of a man, right? And
I'm not asking about the human incarnation. I'm asking about the spiritual Jesus, the one that doesn't exist on earth anymore.
Well, yeah, I mean Jesus, but when he resurrected, he didn't become the Father, right? He didn't.
That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking, is he fully God?
Yes, he is fully God. He was fully God.
Is the Father fully God?
Yes, the Father is fully God.
Is the Father identical to Jesus?
No.
Okay. So then you have two things, fully God, not identical. The way that we count is that would be two gods.
It's the same essence. It's God in a limited form. He limited himself. And I would say
what is an
Father
essence?
I would say the Father is his true form, his true existence, right?
That's modalism, then. That's a heresy. You're going to hell for that.
No, it's not. It's not. I mean,
if you're saying that the Father is like the true mode of God, and then Jesus is like a limited mode of God, then that's modalism.
I mean, Jesus is different, but he's still God.
Is Jesus a different mode of God? A different form of God?
He's a different form of God, yes.
Then that's modalism. That's heresy.
No, I mean that's just standard Christian doctrine. Nobody believes that Jesus is the Father. Nobody believes that Jesus is the Father.
No, that's not what I'm saying. But you can't say that Jesus is a mode of God. Modalism is a heresy. Are you?
I guess I'm not using that term. I'm not. I think you're maybe.
So modalism is the doctrine that the persons of the Trinity represent only three modes or aspects of the divine revelation, not distinct and coexisting parts of the divine nature.
Okay.
And I mean, like, look, if you want to defend modalism, that's fine. Modalism is at least defensible. But standard Christian doctrine rejects modalism as heresy. And you can also have partialism, where you can say that Jesus is part of God, but that's also, like, a heresy. Like, the non-heretical versions of the Trinity are nonsense. Now, if you want to be a heretic, heretics are cool. I like heretics. But, you know... standard Christian dogma, nonsense. Like way more way easier to defend Islam or Judaism.
I don't think I'm arguing heresy. I don't think I'm arguing anything different than what the standard Christian theology is. Jesus, when he came here on earth, was not the Father, right? He was God
I'm
in
not.
a limited form.
I'm not talking
let
about
me
the Father.
finish.
I'm talking about God.
Sure. The Father. Okay, so we'll just say God, right? God the Father. Okay, we're talking
Because
about
there's God, which is the whole thing, right? And then there's the Father, the Son, and the Spirit.
Right. So think of the Almighty God, right? Creator of the universe. Forget Jesus for a moment. The Almighty Creator of all things puts himself into a man, okay, and limits his ability for a purpose, for his own greater purpose. Can you follow that? So he can exist as the Almighty, limitless Creator.
Yeah. So
also exist in a limited state within a man and still carry out his purpose.
I mean, that's just a contradiction in terms, right? I mean, so the question is when Jesus was incarnate, right? You know, in, I don't know, 30 AD or whatever, was God all powerful?
Yes.
Okay.
100%.
So Jesus was all powerful because Jesus is God, right?
Jesus is God in a limited state, so he wasn't all powerful. And the scriptures make that clear.
So wait a minute.
He always appeals to the Father.
Please.
Wait, let me finish. He always appeals.
You interrupted me. What?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I mean, I guess I'm trying to get a thought out, and I just keep getting cut off. But go ahead.
So when Jesus was incarnate, God was all powerful. However, you also said that Jesus is God, and that God was limited. So we have premise 1, God is all powerful. Premise 2, Jesus is God. Premise 3, Jesus is limited. Premise 4, if something is limited, then it is not all powerful. Conclusion, God is not all powerful, which is a contradiction because God is all powerful.
Okay, so I'm not seeing the logical fallacy here.
It was a contradiction.
I guess you're not understanding what I'm saying. If the Father has a plan and a purpose on this earth, and that involves Jesus coming here as the promised Messiah, and God limits his omnipotent and omnipresence and puts it into the form of a man in that state, right? It's not like the Father stops existing because of Jesus's existence. There's simultaneous existence happening.
That's fine. Jesus can exist at the same time as the Father. I don't have an issue with that. The issue is saying that Jesus is identical to God. Not identical to the Father, identical to God. Because if Jesus is identical to God, then God and Jesus share all properties. That's what it means to be identical.
Right. And so I think what we're kind of into semantics here. Like, what is God? And obviously it's a spirit.
Whatever God is, it's the thing that's all powerful, all knowing, all loving, divinely simple, all of these things, right?
No, because the Father is limited. I mean, the Father is not limited. Jesus is limited. So,
do you believe that God is not all powerful?
I believe that Jesus was not all powerful.
Do you believe that Jesus is identical to God?
I believe that Jesus is God in a limited state.
Okay, so you don't believe that Jesus is God.
As the scriptures say, right?
So then you don't believe that Jesus is God. You believe that Jesus is like part of God or like a piece of God.
No, I believe that Jesus is the Father in a limited state. And God the Father, right?
So Jesus is not identical to God then. Jesus is like part of God or like has part of the powers of God or is like a limited version of God or something like that.
I think what it comes down to is how you define God. And if God is a spirit, the Holy Spirit, then why can't...
no, God... Well, I mean, Trinitarians will say that, yes, the Holy Spirit is identical to God.
Okay. I guess I'm not really sure where you're pointing out a contradiction here.
Well, so this standard Trinitarian dogma, which is like this is standard Christian dogma, is that Jesus is identical to God, the Father is identical to God, and the Holy Spirit is identical to God. They all are God. And God is one thing, whatever that means. But that means that if Jesus is identical to God, God being the whole thing, the divine Godhead or whatever, and that means that Jesus shares all the properties that divine Godhead has. And that divine Godhead has omnipotence, has omniscience, has, omnipresence and all of these things.
Yeah, Jesus didn't have any of that.
And Jesus didn't have that, which means that Jesus cannot be identical to the divine Godhead. So you can't have it both ways. You can't have that Jesus is God, but also Jesus doesn't have all the properties of God. That's like that would be a contradiction, right?
Well, I think sometimes if you use the term God and you're referring to the Father, I think you need to be more specific.
I'm not referring to the Father.
Well, when you say omnipresence and
I'm referring to the Trinity, to the thing that the Trinity makes up. Sure.
I guess I'm not confused by this at all. Like if God the Father wants to put his spirit in a man, and that spirit, that essence, that thing that is alive, right? If that is God within Christ, then he's God, but he's limited.
It could be a God. He could make a little God that has like a little bit less power.
Well, no,
but then it's not monotheism.
Being, okay, but if it was a completely different being, then yes. Like if it was.
Right, they are different beings, right? They are.
I think as man, we don't have the ability to understand, obviously, how something can exist in multiple states at one time. I think that's where.
I mean, I understand quantum mechanics well. I have no problem with that.
That's why I thought you'd have no problem with this, because it's pretty similar.
Quantum mechanics is actually like well founded and axiomatic. This is not. Like you can't say that the Father is the same being as Jesus, because they're not. In order to be the same being, they would have to have the same properties.
Yeah, but I don't think you're opening your mind enough to if you can see that in quantum mechanics there's something similar, right?
There's nothing similar. Quantum mechanics is formulated in like a mathematical way, and there's no contradictions there. There is a contradiction in the standard doctrine of the Trinity.
I don't see the contradiction. I mean, if God the Father wants to exist simultaneously in a man,
is the Father the same being as Jesus?
I would say yes. It's the same. It's the same. Yes, but so like the Father has.
Do they have the same properties?
Properties, yes. Capabilities, no.
Capabilities are a type of property, right? Your ability to do something would be a property.
You can argue that. That's fine. That's fine.
Okay. So if two beings, A and B, have different properties. Sorry, I shouldn't say two beings. Let's say that you have.
Let me.
I'll just say it instead. Two beings with, two or some number of beings with different properties, can't be the same being because they have different properties, right?
Right.
So if they have different properties, then they can't be the same being. God and Jesus can't be the same being.
I know where you're going with this. I'll just say this: I'm not you, right? We're two completely separate people, different minds. Like we are just two different forms of beings, okay? Yep. Now, if I had this crazy supernatural power and I could just create another being and kind of be inside that being at the same time while I'm in my present being, that's kind of how I think of the Father and the Son.
So like Jesus was a puppet?
No, I mean Jesus was the Father in the form of a
human.
Yeah,
so Jesus was like the body of Jesus was just a puppet.
I don't know if it'd be a puppet. When I think of a puppet, I think of kind of a lifeless just object, right? And
well,
Jesus
I mean,
wasn't
so did Jesus need to breathe?
Yeah, he existed just as any man did.
Okay, does God need to breathe?
No, because he's not in the form of a man. But
Jesus is God.
Yeah, correct. Jesus is God in the form of a man. Correct.
Okay. So Jesus is God. Maybe in the form of man, but Jesus is still God, right?
We may have a stalemate here. I would love to move on to something else.
Okay.
I'm not. I'm not.
Anyway, the only reason I brought this up is because Judaism and Islam don't have this problem. I don't know why you think that Judaism and Islam are less defensible than Christianity when there's at least philosophical contention over the reasonability of the Trinity.
I'll disprove Islam in like 10 seconds.
Go ahead.
It's because Muhammad has no. It's like when you take a book and then you just take a page from another random book and put it at the end. Muhammad doesn't fit the story. The whole Bible is about the Messiah. It's all about the coming of the Messiah. That's all it's about.
Well, that's the Christian interpretation, but that's not the.
No. I mean, no.
No. I mean that's not the Jewish interpretation. No.
It is the Jewish interpretation. It was
no, it's not. That's some Jewish people's interpretation, but they don't see Jesus as fitting all of the prophecies. So.
I'm not saying that Jesus is their Messiah, but they are waiting for the Messiah. The Old Testament is
so to be clear, your disproof of Islam relies on a Christian reading of the Hebrew Bible and the Christian Bible, whereas the Muslim reading of those books is that they actually are corrupted.
I understand that. Let's take the New Testament out of the equation.
It's not an internal critique, right? It's not a valid internal critique.
Just give me a few seconds here to finish a couple sentences. Let's take the New Testament out of the equation, even though Islam validates the New Testament. It recognizes it, right?
It thinks it's been corrupted. It thinks it's a corrupt account.
There's some contradiction there. They actually say it's a reliable source and the Christians should go to it. But anyway, let's just remove it. If we just look at the Old Testament,
the Hebrew Bible, by the way, is what it's called.
Messiah.
Yeah, it talks about a Messiah. It talks about the Messiah as a literal physical king, and they thought that for a long time they thought that Cyrus was the Messiah, actually, the Persian king Cyrus.
Yeah. Sure, but the weird thing about Islam is they admit and agree that Jesus is the Messiah. Okay, and all the scriptures are pointing to the Messiah, like constantly throughout the whole book, and
no, not really. I mean, like the idea of the Messiah is it's a post Torah thing, right? The Messiah comes about in First Temple Judaism, when you have you'll find it in the book, like the books of prophets and the books of kings and so on, but you won't find it in the Hebrew Bible, in the Torah, right? The original 5 books of Moses.
Okay, so I mean, you can argue Isaiah and Ezekiel and Zechariah.
Well, those aren't in the Torah, right? That's my point.
Sure. But I mean, they were still inspired scripture to the Jews, right? It's part of the Old Testament.
Yeah, sure. Well, the Old Testament is not the Bible of the Jews, right? That's the Hebrew Bible.
Correct. Okay, I see where you're going. But
they are different.
But nonetheless, those Isaiah, Ezekiel, Zechariah.
Yep.
Jews acknowledge that as inspired scripture, referring to the Messiah. Okay. And hold on.
No, not necessarily. So Isaiah refers to Israel, doesn't refer to a Messiah. I think Zechariah does refer to a Messiah. And what was the third one that you mentioned?
Isaiah definitely refers to the Messiah.
No, Isaiah definitely refers to this. Definitely refers to the people of Israel.
I mean, it addresses the people of Israel, but that's not all that's contained in the book.
No, it definitely is. Like the passages that Christians like to point to and say, yes, this is obviously talking about the Messiah. It's actually talking about Israel, like a personified Israel.
Okay, I don't think all Jews take that stance, though.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. That's like in the Midrash, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, well, I guess we could argue
Christians
that.
Don't take that view because Christians use Isaiah as a justification for Jesus, but that's not the Jewish position.
I will say that there is no real unified Jewish position because there's so many different sects of Judaism, but I guess I don't want to go down that road. My point was that Muhammad does not fit into scripture. It doesn't fit into God's story. It's just kind of like a randomly inserted revelation, like, all of a sudden, Muhammad is the most important thing in the universe, and forget the Messiah, forget the Old
Muhammad
Testament,
was just a
forget the New
prophet.
Testament.
Muhammad was just a prophet,
exactly,
in their view.
He was just a prophet.
And by the way, the notion that another prophet could come after the Messiah doesn't contradict the Jewish scripture.
The notion that it's like the central key.
No, he's just the last one, not the central key one, just the last one. That's the Muslim position.
Are you trying to say that Muhammad isn't like the core focus and belief of Islam?
He's just the last one. They say peace be upon him about any of the prophets, including Muhammad, but also about what do they call him? Musa? Do they call him Musa for Moses?
Man,
or whatever the
have
names
you
are.
met many? Have you met many?
I've probably spoken with more Muslims than you have.
I mean, I live pretty close to Dearborn. I don't think you have.
I talk to theists like 3 times a week.
That's true. Okay, I'll grant you that. You probably do speak. You probably do speak about Islam more than I do on a daily basis. But nonetheless, man, I mean, I think it's just common knowledge that Muhammad I mean, that is that's kind of like their main focus when it comes to religion. Like that, I don't know. I've
Well, he was
never
their
met a
last prophet.
Muslim-
I mean, like, Jesus was your last guy. So that's why you guys focus on Jesus,
Yeah,
even
but
though
I
there's
mean,
all the other
okay, so I'll
prophets.
just say this: like, there are many prophets in Scripture in the Old Testament, and Jews didn't just get fixated on like Zechariah or that's not how. That's not historically.
Well, yeah, because there
how-
wasn't an understanding that one of them was last. That's all.
Sure. Okay. I mean, for me, at least, like, it's the Quran just doesn't fit with the Old Testament and New Testament. It's just an obvious outlier. If you read it, you can
I would
see
say that the Hebrew Bible doesn't fit. Sorry, the Christian Bible doesn't fit with the Hebrew
the New
Bible.
Testament. Okay, based on what?
Well, based on the descriptions of prophecy just don't seem to line up. The descriptions of what the Messiah is supposed to be just don't seem to line up. The actual philosophy of the belief system just isn't the same at all. Like the philosophy of like the theology that you get from the Christian Bible is very, very Greek, whereas the philosophy that you see in the Hebrew Bible is very, very Levantine. So like they just don't match up really at all, and it checks out that the philosophy of the Christian Bible is Greek because they were living in essentially like a Greek or like a Greco-Roman colony, and so of course the people that were living there were inspired by Greek philosophy, but that's just not what that's not what the Jews thought 500 to 1,000 years prior.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'd love to have a further discussion with that, but I guess that's kind of going off topic. So you're open to the possibility of the existence of God. You think Christianity is like the least plausible religion out there, then? Can
I
you
mean,
be
I think
honest
that
with me?
so I think that like I think that various
since-
forms of paganism are probably less plausible.
Do you truly and sincerely believe that, or do you just kind of have like a bias against Christianity?
No, I
did
actually think
when I was
that
agnostic.
Christianity is just like philosophically bankrupt. Like I think the philosophy is really, really like the actual theology just like makes no sense. Like let me explain why. So Christianity is very old and has very old philosophical tradition. And it's the kind of philosophical tradition that Christianity has was very focused on trying to make it like as all-encompassing philosophically as it possibly could. And what that meant is that the philosophy and the doctrine that was introduced by the early church fathers, there was too much, and it ends up just being contradictory. It ends up just not making sense. Whereas Jewish philosophy is a lot vaguer. There's not really like well-defined doctrines for a lot of things. There's not really well-defined like creeds and things like that. So it can fit a lot more with like a modern understanding of how epistemology works, how ontology works, and things like that. And similarly, the Muslim philosophies are also generally kind of a little bit vaguer, which makes them more plausible because they're not as rigid and they're not as rigidly wrong.
Okay, so you said the Trinity is like the main reason why
The Trinity is like the spear through the heart of Christianity, if you will, because it is essential, right?
It is essential, but you can't like humble yourself to like, well, maybe this is just above my pay grade because I'm not God. I can't understand how a
That's a
creator
cop-out.
could also exist.
Why
It's not a
would
cop-out at all.
why would Christians then believe it if they couldn't understand it? What like it,
Well, I mean,
nowhere in
you
the
can't
Bible it
fully
doesn't say that
understand it.
the Trinity is not in the Bible. Like it doesn't say that there's a Trinity in the Bible. That's church tradition that comes from 100 years, 200 years
in
after.
the Old Testament, hey, even in the Old Testament, God appears in the form of a man. God the burning bush. I mean, God can exist wherever he wants, as whatever he wants. He's God. He exists outside of space and time. And if you can't humble yourself to just say, well, maybe this is just something I can't fully understand, but I can at least try to comprehend it on a high level, and just admit,
I mean,
hey, I'm not God.
This isn't like I understand the claim. It just is predicated on not knowing how counting works, which makes sense because they didn't have a formalized system of counting back then. Like mathematics just wasn't as developed, so they didn't have as good an understanding of like the axioms of the integers.
That's a low blow that Christians don't understand how counting works. But I mean,
you understand how counting works about everything except the three gods that are also one god.
I think you're choosing to not believe, to not even like try to comprehend that. I feel like you're.
I mean,
feel like
look.
you're
So
almost
if you want to be like a
When you call it
modalist
three
or a
gods-
partialist, then that's actually totally reasonable, and I think that solves all of the problems of the Trinity. But that's not Christian dogma.
Sure. Okay, well then let's just say this. You don't have to subscribe to the Trinity to be a Christian anyway. I do, but
I think you
I don't
do.
think that's
Don't
no,
you?
you don't. No, not at all.
I mean, if you
And
don't think
actually,
that
in the
if you don't
early
think that
church-
Jesus is God, then how are you?
Well, you
How are
have
you
to
a
understand that in
Christian?
the early church, there were some of the early church fathers didn't believe that Jesus was God.
Well, yeah, they're called Arians. They're not called Christians.
No, they're Christians. There
Or
were some
Sabellians
of
as
the
well,
most-
I guess.
Some of the most influential church fathers, gosh, I'm blanking out on his name right now. It starts with an O. But anyway, some of the most influential church fathers were not Trinitarians. And I
Ooh.
mean, I think
Oh, no, never mind. You said you were blanking on their name. I'm not going to press you on that.
I'm going to message you when I can remember. Oh gosh, it's on the tip of my tongue. If you just search early church fathers, Trinity, I'm sure you will find something.
Trinitarianism in the
Origin,
early church
yeah,
fathers.
yeah. Origin. Sorry, knew it started with an O.
What was his name?
Origin.
Origin? That's a name?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is. I
How
think
do
he
you
was
spell
from
it?
Phoenicia. Was it Origen?
Yeah, okay. Okay, so you're saying that he wasn't a
Trinitarian.
He wasn't a Trinitarian. Okay.
And he was a very, very influential church father. I mean, we get a lot from Origen. And so all I'm saying is that I don't think it's fair or accurate to write off Christianity.
Wait, hold on. I could be totally mistaken. Maybe Wikipedia is wrong, but I just looked up Origin on Wikipedia, and it says that he wrote a book that described the Trinity of God. So I don't know what you mean when you say that. Like he apparently he contributed significantly to the development of the Trinity, and he was among the first to name the Holy Spirit as a member of the Godhead. He was a subordinationist, which is like a particular doctrine of the Trinity, where the Son and the Holy Spirit are like, or rather, the Son is like lower ranking than God, than the Father, but it's still a Trinity.
I don't have the details prepared of what Origen believed on hand, but if he believes that Jesus is lesser than the Father, a lesser form,
it's just a heretical form of Trinitarianism, but it's still Trinitarianism.
Okay. Yeah. All I know is that there were early church fathers who did not believe in the Trinity. I thought it was Origen. Sounds like Origen just had a more nuanced view of the Trinity. I guess I just don't have that on hand, but you have Jehovah's Witnesses, obviously, but I don't want to go there.
Would you say that's a Christian?
That's a tough answer. Maybe. I don't know. Only God knows that, I think. I think they definitely have a radically different view than historical Christianity, but I can't, I'm not the one to judge to say, they're saved or not saved, or they have a heretical view that damns them to hell or not. I'm not in any place to make that judgment. But all I'm saying is that I wouldn't, just because you maybe don't comprehend the Trinity fully. I do. I have no problem with it. I just, clearly
I
you
understand.
don't.
I understand the claims. They lead to contradiction, right?
I don't see the contradiction at all. Like whatsoever.
I laid one out explicitly. So God the Father is all powerful.
Mhm.
God the Father is identical to God. Jesus is identical to God. Therefore, Jesus shares all the properties with God the Father. Jesus is not all powerful. God the Father is all powerful. Therefore, they don't share all the same properties. A true contradiction.
Okay, if I was able to put myself in another body, okay, and I'm doing my best here, and I had a rope around me, okay, and I'm constrained. It's still me in another form, but I'm just kind of a lesser, more constrained form. I don't know how else to. I'm doing my best.
Wait, so you're saying sorry, can you repeat that?
If I were able, because I'm basically trying to put myself in the position of God the Father, which is kind of an absurd thing to do, but I'm trying to prove a point. If I were able to put myself in another body, Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And exists simultaneously somehow.
So you're just controlling
But
two
that-
bodies.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
Okay, well then you are not, or one of the bodies is not fully you, because you are both bodies. One of the
But it's
bodies would
still
be
me.
part of you, but not fully you.
It's still me. It's still my
But it's not
essence.
full.
It's still like
It's
my
not fully you though.
existence. Yeah. Okay. I don't want to go down this road again because I think it's
Okay,
just
that's
going to
fine.
lead
That's
to
fine.
that end.
Yeah. Anyway, so what actually is your? So I've been critiquing Christianity plenty. What's actually your argument that Christianity? What's your best argument for the truth of Christianity?
It happened in stages. I think first off, just kind of recognizing, that our universe in itself is kind of is fundamentally like not possible, right? Because there has to be a creation of what's created.
It's clearly
Things
possible. It exists, right?
Exactly, right? But I've always like been really fascinated by that. Like, where did existence come from? Well, it came from X, Y, or Z. Okay, well then, what created X, Y, and Z? And you kind of just go back infinitely. And
Well,
when
or
I
you
realized
don't,
that,
right? Maybe there is just a brute fact.
yeah, I think I may know your view that the universe has always existed. I think this is kind of like a newer view that people are kind of.
It's my fault.
lacking on.
This is actually my fault. This is the reason why Ian holds this view, and it's the reason why Justin holds this view. And I think if you find an atheist on TikTok that holds this view, I think it's mostly my fault. Because I started pushing this view about a year ago, based off of some data that came out. I mean, like, I'm not wholly convinced of it. But I'm like 60-40 or like 60-40, maybe 70-30 that the universe has always existed.
Okay. Yeah. So you're not fully convinced. That's good. So you would say that if there is a Big Bang, do you believe that the Big Bang's a possibility?
Oh, I mean, the Big Bang almost certainly happened.
Or I should say that just a one-time occurring Big Bang.
I suppose it's possible. I don't know how likely it is, but
like what occurred
yeah, I suppose it's
before
possible.
that?
Yeah.
Like, how did that even become initiated?
So before I started taking the position that the universe has always existed, because that has not always been my position. This is a position that I adopted about a year ago. Before that, my position was essentially, I don't know. Are you familiar with the Hartle-Hawking model?
Is that like the Big Bang? It's just like, and then it's like crunch the.
No, the Hartle-Hawking model is a model of the universe that has a finite past, but never didn't exist. And so it's complicated. And I spent like I spent like hours trying to get my thoughts together to make a video about it, and I finally did. But the idea is that you have a non-temporal universe, and then at a certain place in the non-temporal universe is time.
Wait a minute. We got to stop right here. Just give me 1 second. So
yeah, sure.
A finite past, but always existed.
No,
are we talking the Trinity, or what are we talking here?
So I mean, I was explaining it. So you have a non-temp. So clearly, a non-temporal universe it wouldn't even make sense to say that it had a beginning, right?
Okay.
Because it's non-temporal. It doesn't have time.
Sure.
But in this non-temporal universe, there is essentially a place where time starts. So you could imagine, so the way that you can think about this is you can think of, like, you can't walk around in a non-temporal universe because, of course, walking requires time. But imagine that you were like, imagine that you were simulating a non-temporal universe, and you could just like, you could plop yourself down and kind of look around at how it is. So if you were walking around in the non-temporal part, the part that's purely spatial, there would be no time, nothing would be changing. But if you got to a certain place in that non-temporal universe, clocks would start ticking. And so this is a thing that was proposed by Stephen Hawking and James Hartle. And while it involves essentially a complex time coordinate, which is very, very strange, but it actually has some merit to it as far as like the quantum gravitational description. So I actually think that it's, despite how counterintuitive it is, I actually think that it might be plausible if the universe actually did have a beginning. A plausible explanation, that is.
Yeah, I mean, just you bringing that up and just how, I guess, counterintuitive. I'll just use the same word because that it is. you can you not take that approach or that stance with the Trinity? Like it's just kind of counterintuitive. It's difficult to understand. It's very convoluted. It's complex.
If somebody could give me a mathematical formulation of the Trinity that I could then check the premises and make sure that the logic followed through, then I wouldn't have an issue with it. You can do that with the Hartle-Hawking state. It's perfectly well described mathematically. It follows from standard quantum axioms if you throw in gravity, essentially. It's very difficult to explain to the layperson because it's described mathematically. Like if you want to describe it precisely, you have to describe it mathematically. But that doesn't mean that it's like contradictory or anything like that. It's just a mathematical description of something that is complicated to explain without using mathematics.
Yeah. No, that's understandable. Okay. I mean, I guess we'll get back to what you said before. You asked me like what caused me to believe, and for me, I think just believing that there's a creator is much more plausible than some really complex temporal state of the universe where time only existed when like you entered a certain like coordinate. To me, I mean, granted, I haven't dug into what you're talking about. I don't know the details, but in my opinion, I think just looking and observing what we see around us, which is what science encourages, and this is kind of how we form hypotheses and come up with theories. I see life coming from life. I don't see life coming from non-life. That's what I observe.
Hold on. You don't want to say that, right?
Why?
When you say life comes from life, you mean that like biological organisms give birth to other biological organisms, right?
Well, I'm just saying that life doesn't just come into existence out of nothing, out of
that's
a rock,
what that is.
right?
That is
Or
what
out
you
of a
believe.
tree.
You believe that God took inorganic material and turned it into organic material, right?
Yes, I believe that God
and God is not organic, right?
I believe that God is able to create life out of thin air if He wants. Like,
Okay,
God,
so you do believe that life can come from non-life,
not
unless you're
without God.
equivocating on the word life.
We're kind of getting off topic. Like even Jesus says that God can create the sons of Abraham out of these very stones. So I mean, whether it's literal or not, I guess I'm not really trying to prove that point. I'm trying to say that what you observe in the universe is life comes from life. It doesn't come from non-life, right? Would you agree with that?
No, and you don't agree with that either.
So I guess explain to me, where have you observed or where have you seen evidence that life came from non-life?
I mean, I just trust the biologists that I've talked to, and they say that, yeah, we have a pretty good understanding of how life can arise spontaneously through chemical means. I'm not a biologist, so I'm not really equipped to, critically evaluate their claims, but in the same way I expect them to trust me on physics, I trust them on biology.
Has there been an experiment that's yielded those results?
There's been a lot of experiments that yield the various steps, again, from what I've been told. There have been a lot of experiments that yield the various steps that we know are required. There just hasn't been an experiment that puts all of them in order.
So it hasn't really proven it. I mean, you can prove certain steps.
Yeah, you haven't proven that God created life either, so this is not a good criticism.
No, I'm not. And I'm not saying that there's going to be proof. There is not proof of God. There's evidence, but you're not going to prove it in a lab. You're not going to prove it.
But we could prove abiogenesis in a lab. That is something that's plausibly provable.
Sure.
Or at least it's not logically impossible, right? But the statement, I hate the statement, life doesn't come from non-life. Because when you say it, you're referring to biological organisms. Like your claim is that biological organisms only come from other biological organisms, right?
Correct.
Okay, but God's not a biological organism. So you believe that life comes from non-life in that sense.
But God is
because
living.
You believe it comes from God.
God is a living entity, right?
That's equivocation on the word living. Because when you say life can't come from non-life, you mean biological organisms. That's what you mean. Because if you mean something else, then I don't know why anybody would agree with that.
I mean, life on planet Earth, it only exists in biological organisms. I mean, there is no other form of life. And what I mean is God
I agree.
Is alive, right?
And God is so the word life as used in the context of biology just doesn't apply to God. So if you're making a biological claim, like life only comes from life, that word life doesn't apply to God there.
So would you agree that like a form of that life. Well, I guess I don't want to focus on just man, but life with a thinking mind. Okay, life that has a mind, that has reason, that has because I want to include animals in this too, but life comes from life, and God.
What do you mean by
What do you mean by
life? What do you mean by life here?
That's what I was just describing, right?
A thinking thing?
A being, yeah, pretty much, right? A being that has a mind, that has reason, that has logic.
Trees are alive, and they don't have that.
Sure. But that's why I'm focusing more on man and animals, and that there's something greater to man, and I guess you could kind of include animals, but man is unique, and I don't think that we, as complex as we are, I don't think we came here and became what we are just from some matter, some non-life form of matter. It's like
I mean, is this an argument from incredulity?
It's much more a leap of faith to believe that, in my opinion, than it is to believe in a creator who is like us.
Like, I mean, if we've reproduced most of the steps required for life to arise spontaneously in a laboratory, is it really that much of a leap of faith to say that, oh yeah, all of these steps that we've done in a laboratory, all that would need to happen naturally is for them to all happen in order?
I guess I'm not familiar. What experiments in a laboratory have proven life?
So like spontaneous arrangement of amino acids have been formed. I could go look up all the details. Again, I'm not a biologist. I'm just taking the word of the biologist that I do know. But like that, I could go pull up a list if that would be helpful.
I mean, I can look more into it. Even if it's true that so amino acids were formed, that's still.
Well, no, I mean that was just the first thing. I guess somebody's saying self-replicating RNA. I mean, that's not like a cell, because a cell requires a cell membrane. A cell, actually, there's something quite recent. A cell membrane was spontaneously formed in a lab recently, using like there was like some additive that they had to add to the standard Miller-Urey experiment, and they were able to produce cell membranes, or protocell membranes. So like all of these things that like used to be said, like 50 years ago, if you had said, well, you'll never be able to produce a cell membrane, you'll never be able to reproduce RNA, like all these things have been done now. It just hasn't all been done like in the same setting.
Okay, well that's interesting. So RNA was created.
That's what somebody said in the comments. I again,
non-life matter. Okay.
That's what somebody said in the comments. I can verify for you if you want.
No, it's okay. I mean, you can if you want, but I don't want to waste too much time on that. I was just basically just saying that, making the observation that life came from life, and that the Creator is a living thing, as the Word of God says, right? So if we are to believe that God has revealed himself to man through the prophets, through Scripture, which is what Christians believe, it does seem much more plausible to me that this whole universe came from a designer, from some intelligent form of life, and not.
Why did he design it this way? Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's a fair question. He designed it this way for his own plan and purpose. I mean, I would say it's beyond our understanding. I mean, God doesn't tell us why he did every little thing. And
would you say that this is the best way it could have been designed?
I would say so, because if God designed it as something that's far greater than I could ever even imagine being, I would trust in that intelligent mind than I would in my own. I'm nothing compared to God.
So you would say that the world could not be any better?
So I see where you're going with this. You think that the world is supposed to be perfect if
no, I'm just saying
if there was
the
a God,
not perfect.
The best. I mean, it's the best according to God's plan. It's not a perfect world. It's
that's
full
the
of
claim.
suffering.
I'm asking you, do you think that that's correct? Like, does that actually seem plausible to you? That like there's no possible way the universe could have been better?
No, I think God's carrying out his plan just perfectly according to how he's intended it to be. Why would I challenge God on what's the best? I mean,
well,
you understand where I'm going with this?
Plausibly, God isn't real.
Well, I understand, but if you're
so if it seems like, I mean, like, how do you feel about seemings? Do you think that seemings give at least a level of justification for a belief? Like, if something seems like it's true, then you at least have some level of justification for it being true?
No.
No.
No, I don't think that's a good approach. I mean, I think
Then how do you know that you're not a brain in a vat?
I don't know 100%, but
How do you
I can only
justify
go
not
by,
being a brain in a vat? Sorry.
I just go by the evidence, and it doesn't seem to point to that. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's like a 0.0001%
Yeah, so it
chance
seems
that
like
that's
you're
true.
not, right?
In this case, yeah, I mean, it does. It seems like it's not. I wouldn't apply that logic to everything, but I mean, if you're asking me like, how do I know the state of reality that I'm living in, then yeah, I guess I would use that philosophical approach.
I mean, like the notion of seemings, like it's just like a bare level of justification. It's really not that contentious. Just this idea that like things that seem to be the case, absent any other evidence, are more likely than not to be the case. But you know, it's a very, very low level of like a low standard, right? It doesn't, I mean, if you want to reject it, I guess, but then how do you do empiricism, like, or like how do you justify anything if not at a base level, at least through seemings?
Yeah, I mean, I guess. So say the word again. Seem as, is that what you're saying?
Seemings, just like it seems like it's the case that XYZ.
I mean, I think that's kind of what guides us. I don't know if that's like, because obviously, if you can prove something differently than what it seems,
yeah,
then
absolutely,
it's no longer the truth.
Right. So seemings are not strong justifications. They're just a little tiny bit of justification for some belief.
Yeah. Okay.
And so,
I mean, that's fair.
Yeah. So the reason I ask is because I like, this is something that I was introduced to by Ian. It's called phenomenological conservatism. That seemings at least give a small amount of justification for some belief. And you know, if you have some other evidence that contradicts that belief, then sure, you throw away the seeming and but like absent contradictory evidence, you have some justification. So the trouble is that it definitely seems like the universe could have been better.
Sure.
That seems obvious, in fact. So what justification do we have for thinking that it couldn't have been better? That could disregard that seeming, or that could, that could contradict that seeming?
I mean, it seems like it could be better. It'd be nice if it was perfect. I mean, but it's not, and that is what it is. You just accept reality.
But then we at least have some level of justification for actually thinking that it could be better. But if that's true, then we have some level of justification for thinking that God did not make the best world.
Well, I think God created a world that he wanted us to improve. I don't think he created a perfect world and we're just robots and we're just like supposed to live perfectly in this world. That's not what he
wanted. Seems like a straw man. I haven't mentioned perfect world at all.
Well, you're saying like the best, you know, you use the term best. I just kind of like go with perfect when I. Sorry, I'm getting a phone call.
Okay.
I just kind of equate that with perfect if you're saying best.
Well, okay, that's fair. I shouldn't have used the word best. I should have said that it's clear that God did not create a world that was that could be improved. Sorry.
What do you mean? He did create a world that could be improved.
It seems like God, if God exists, it seems like he did create a world that could be improved, i.e., there were other better worlds that God could have created.
I mean, that's from our perspective.
That's how it seems. Yeah. So is there a reason to think otherwise? Like, is there some piece of evidence that would suggest that we should throw away that seeming?
You're losing me. Sorry, you lost me the last.
Well, so let me just give a simpler example. So, if you look out at the sky, let's say that it's 5,000 years ago, or whatever. You look at the sky and you see stars, and they look like they're not moving. It seems like they rotate over the course of a night, and then they change. The constellations change over the course of a year. But otherwise, they look like they're not moving. So, in fact, it seems like that Earth is the thing that's stationary, and the stars are the things that are moving. And absent evidence absent contradictory evidence, that is a justified belief to have, right?
Sure.
So my point is that like we look out at the universe and we see, things are like all right, but they're not great, and like I could think of plenty of ways that it could be improved. So it seems like this world isn't or it seems like there could have been better worlds that God could have made. And that's a justified position to hold, unless you have some reason, unless you have some like deeper justification, some stronger justification to contradict it. So what's the stronger contradiction?
I can agree to that. It may seem that way. That's fine. I mean, it does seem like that the world could be created in a better state than what it's in. You know,
then why do you think that it isn't?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think anyone claims to know. I think.
Well, I
think
do. I claim to know.
Well, what I'm saying is, I think God created the world the way He meant for it to be created, for a greater plan and purpose, which is to come. Like, no Christian believes that, like, I know exactly why God created the world the way He did. I know, I know exactly what His plan is for eternity. Even trying to grasp the concept of eternity and spending eternity with God is beyond our capability. So, but yeah, I mean, I would agree with you that the world seems like it could have been a lot better. And there's some passages in Scripture that give you a little bit of clue into why things are the way they are. But I guess God's always compared, at least that the Father is always compared, as a father, and we're His children, and it's easy to understand that in terms of, I have kids, and I wouldn't want them to be like perfect little robots in this perfect little world.
I don't know why you keep assuming that perfect means robots.
Well, like if there's nothing that goes wrong, then I feel like you don't really learn, you don't really mature. I think that there's a place for suffering, for challenges, for trial. I think there's.
I can even agree with you, but that would just mean that the perfect world would have some degree of that.
Okay,
so that doesn't mean that doesn't mean that this is that perfect world.
Right. I don't think it is.
But then God created an imperfect thing.
Yeah, correct. He created something.
But he's a perfect creator, isn't he?
He himself is perfect. Correct.
So if God, so prior to God's creation, the only things that existed, God, were perfect, right?
Yeah, I would use that word.
But then after God's creation, the things that existed were not perfect. Because God existed, God's perfect. But the creation is not perfect. So God made the world less perfect?
I think from an eternal perspective, I think it will be perfect. I think at this moment in time,
perfect spans space and time, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
So then, it doesn't matter if it will be perfect. If it's perfect, it's perfect the whole time, right?
The end of all this, right? Like, what's the point of all this? I think it will lead to God's perfect plan. At the moment, we are in this kind of imperfect state in an imperfect world, in a world just full of
that doesn't work though,
suffering and corruption and trials.
Because a world, okay, actually, let's think about this. So I'm gonna like really way oversimplify this. Just suppose for a moment that we can quantify perfectness, like how perfect the universe is, with a number. Maybe we can't. Maybe that's a nonsensical thing to do. But just for the sake of argument, suppose that we can. So
real quick, I have 5% on my phone. I'm not trying to get out of this conversation.
I'm not going to call you a runner. Don't worry. We can call it there and we can pick it up another time if that's okay.
I would like to pick this up.
All right, sounds good, Robert. Thanks for being here.
Sorry. Oh, I mean, you can continue on, but my phone's going to die here in a minute.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So all I was going to say is that it sounds like you're saying that the perfect score now is like 2, but the perfect score in the future will be like 1,000, and that means that the total perfect score will be 1,002, and that's the maximum possible perfect score. But for me, I'm like, why can't we have a 1,000 perfect score now and a 1,000 perfect score in the future, so that the maximal possible perfect score for the whole of space-time is 2,000? It doesn't seem like we necessarily need imperfection now to have more perfection later.
Okay, I'm trying to understand your point here. I mean, we're striving for perfection as a civilization, as humanity. I think. Are you? I guess are you arguing against the existence of God in this?
What I'm saying is that it seems like God didn't create the perfect world, and that seems incompatible with God's perfect creation.
From our limited perspective, it seems that way. But that's what I mean. Oh gosh, let me see if I can think. No, let me see if I can think of an analogy. Like something may seem imperfect. I mean, you've lived life for however many years you're alive, and sometimes something seems like, oh, it's just going terribly wrong, or this was a mistake, and then it turns out to work for the better, and you see the value in what happened, and what seemed like terrible at first is now like, wow, I'm glad that happened because of what. I can't think of a good example, but do you follow my logic?
I do. I can absolutely agree that like sometimes suffering or pain is necessary for growth, but that doesn't apply to like when whole groups of people get wiped out, right? Because they can't grow and nobody remembers them, so other people can't grow from them existing, so there's no growth to be had.
If their existence just instantly stops and they fade into nothing.
I mean, there are people groups surely there are people groups that no longer exist today and nobody remembers them.
Well, sure, but those individuals, they didn't all necessarily cease to exist unless you don't believe in an afterlife.
Well, no, but I mean, do you think that learning can happen in the afterlife?
Yeah, I would imagine.
So wait, so is the afterlife temporal?
I'm not even sure. I don't even think most Christians understand those kind of like very nuanced details of the afterlife. I don't think they do. And that's fine. I mean, I don't think we need to understand everything in the afterlife, and I don't think we're even given enough scripture to draw a conclusion from that. And obviously God intended it to be that way, that our knowledge is limited on these subjects. And I'm okay with that.
So I'll leave you with this. Do you agree that some people die as atheists?
Oh, of course. Okay. All the time.
Do you agree that God wants a relationship with everybody?
I think he does. Yeah, I would say so. If he loved the world, then he certainly does. But he can't force people to have a relationship with him.
Do you agree that in order to have a relationship with anything, whether it's God or Scarlett Johansson or my wife, you need to know that the thing that you're having a relationship or that you want a relationship with exists first?
Oh, of course. Yeah, you do need to know that.
So God is aware that in order to have a relationship with the atheists, which he wants a relationship with the atheists, then he at least must ensure that the atheists know he exists.
Maybe he's made several attempts, but the atheist has just rejected him every time.
So he failed?
It's not... No, they failed.
Well, wait a minute. If his goal is to make them aware of him, and they didn't become aware of him, then he failed.
No, but it has to be on his terms, which is by your own free will. And if by your own free will you've rejected him, then that's not on him, that's on you. I mean, there's no way around that.
I mean, so look, I mean, maybe you could put some blame on the atheist, but like God still failed, right? He still failed in this regard. His goal was to
I don't think he failed,
have a relationship. His goal was to have a relationship with the atheist, and he failed in that. He failed in achieving that goal.
His goal is to have a relationship on his terms, not yours or mine. And if we reject his terms,
so what are his terms, and why can't he make that goal come about?
His terms is us surrendering ourselves to him without our pride and ego.
So he knows what it would take for anyone to do that. He knows what it would take to convince anybody. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if some people can be convinced, honestly.
Well,
I feel
okay,
like...
so to be clear, there are people that are known as non-resisting non-believers. These are people who are just unconvinced, but they're open to the idea. Those people die as atheists all the time. And the only reason they die as atheists is because just nobody has, like they just haven't presented the evidence that they need.
Or at least that's what they claim.
Do you think that non-resistant non-believers don't exist?
No, I think they exist, but I think they claim like, oh, if I saw enough evidence, then I would believe. And you can give them evidence after evidence after evidence, and they're still not even going to open up their minds.
Okay,
to
then you think that there are no non-resistant unbelievers. You think that they are all resistant.
On some level, I think I think that's true, actually. Yeah, I think that they may claim, and
That
they
is
may
a.
be open
By the way,
to
that
it.
is, to be clear. Like, if like you can think that if you want, and like neither of us can prove that one way or the other. But you are doing so much mind reading right now.
No,
Like
no, I don't
you're
think
you're
so.
just being like, well, they weren't convinced by the claim of my religious tradition, so they must be unconvincible. They must not want to believe, right? Like that's mind reading.
Well, I'll say this too, because there's a section of the world population, actually a huge populace, right, who just never heard the gospel, who never was even introduced to God in any way. And if we're talking about them, I think God will be the judge. Like, we don't know how they're going to be judged, and we don't.
I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about people who were born and raised in America. They know what Christians are. Oh, I think he's gone. All right. It was a good combo. Oh, is that Christopher in the box? Christopher, is that the real Christopher who's been waiting so patiently? Can you hear me?
That's me.
Great. Okay, what's your position? What God do you believe in?
I believe in the biblical Christianity, the one some Christians you've just been debating have so terribly articulated, like the guy who was trying to defend the Trinity. I don't know, because I can't hear him speak whenever I'm sitting
Yeah,
here waiting.
if you're in the live guest queue, like on Video Ninja, then you won't be able to hear the other side.
I could only hear your response.
Yeah. So anyway,
first,
what's your best argument for the existence of the Christian God?
So the best it goes back to what we was talking about earlier with you was talking about presuppositionalists and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And what I keep going back to, what I'm trying to go to pin is the fact that it's the impossibility of the contrary. So that means we like to arrive at answers through deductive reasoning when we're able to do so. We don't like to use induction. Deduction's always better because it becomes an absolute or axiomatic, as you've even pointed out. Axioms are much better to go off of because they're deduced. They're not induced. So,
well,
for example,
axioms aren't deduced. Axioms are assumed, right? And then you deduce things from the axioms.
So on and so forth, perhaps. But so it's like, for example, if I hold a tennis ball up in the air and I drop it, you say, oh, it fell to the ground just like I thought it would. And I held it up again. I said, what do you think it's going to do? You would say, most likely it's going to fall again. And if I said what would happen on the 1,000th time, we could do this indefinitely for eternity. And until we experimented on the 1,000th and 1, 2, 3, etc., we're never going to have a definitive answer into the next one.
Sure, you're talking about the problem of induction. Sure, I agree. The problem of induction is a thing depending on what your axioms are. Right, but how do you defend the premise that the contrary of the Christian position is impossible?
Because we, by nature, can only operate within the confinements of a consistent worldview.
Okay, sure. I mean, well, that's not really true. Plenty of people hold mutually contradictory worldviews, but
you would dismiss them.
I would say that they're acting. I would say that they're acting irrationally. Sure.
You would not accept that as a thing. And in fact, if someone came as a Christian and said to you, if you asked them, "Why are you a Christian?" and they said, "Well, because in my life I've had experiences and I know God exists," what would you say to them?
I would say I'm not particularly convinced, but I would really, really like to hear the justification for why the contradictory to the Christian position is impossible. I'd really love to hear the justification of that.
Lead to an illogical conclusion when we go to.
Okay, what's the illogical conclusion that they're led to?
Let's talk about
that they lead to.
Everyone has presuppositions, including yourself. Just because you're an atheist doesn't mean that you don't presuppose.
Yeah, perhaps.
Them. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, I might call them axioms, because I'm not trying to prove my axioms through themselves. Like I'm not trying to make like some presupposition that then proves itself, right?
That's exactly the point when it comes to God. Eventually, no matter who you are or what it is you believe, you have to nail down your presupposition. The Latin term is principium, the foundation on which you stand. You have to have a presupposed starting point from that which you
Okay.
derive all knowledge
Sure.
out.
I mean, alternatively, you could be a coherentist. If you're a coherentist, then you don't take any axiom as a brute fact. Instead, you just kind of have a web of coherent positions.
See, in the Christian worldview, we can reliably rely on our axioms that we deduced and we've discovered through mathematics and all of the things that we say.
Well, I mean, sure, but you still have an axiom, like a fundamental axiom that is unjustified, right?
As well do you. But
okay, I mean, I kind of lean towards coherentism, so I actually don't. Like, if I take the coherentist point of view, then no, I don't have any fundamental axioms. I just take a coherent set of beliefs rather than, some sort of axiomatic set of beliefs. But I mean, that's neither here nor there. The point is presumably you're trying to defend your worldview, so why don't you offer the defense? Like how do you actually get that the contrary position to Christianity is impossible? What's the actual defense of that premise?
Would you agree that there's only two positions, either God exists or he doesn't exist?
Sure, I think that's possible.
That's probably pretty
I think that's fine.
So if God is impossibly not existing, therefore he must exist.
Sorry,
you would agree with
what did you say?
If my premise is true that it is impossible that God does not exist, then therefore we would say he has to exist.
Sure, yeah.
You agree that that's logical. I appreciate your honesty and the consistency of that response because it is so. But the point is that if we just simply look at your internal worldview and see that it's inconsistent and impossible, then you would have to then take your foot off your pedestal and move over to the other foundation.
Yeah, here's the trouble with that. My worldview isn't the only non-God worldview. So debunking my worldview does not prove the God hypothesis.
So there's other atheistic foundations.
There's an infinity of them. There's an infinity of them, an infinity of ontologies and epistemologies and so on.
That's why I defined God exists or he doesn't exist.
Yeah, so
you
now
may have different ways of arguing your point.
Well, no, I mean so you're talking about foundation, like whether God exists or not is not the only foundational part of someone's worldview, right? Someone might be a Platonist, for example, and then their ontology is that there are these things called abstract objects that exist in some abstract realm, and that would form part of their foundation of how they come to logic and how they come to rationality and how they come to epistemology and all these things. On the other hand, I might not be a Platonist, and so I would have a different way of coming to it. So say you disprove my worldview, which is maybe coherentist or whatever it is, you wouldn't have disproved Platonism. You wouldn't have disproved axiological or a naturalistic axiology. You wouldn't have disproved any of the other of infinity of worldviews that have potential justifications for their positions.
Right, which is why instead of going down all the rabbit holes from all the different ones, we would go to the foundation, which the starting point.
They are all different foundations. That is not the starting point for the starting point for Platonism is not there exists no God. That's not the starting point. The starting point for Platonism is that there exists an abstract world with abstract objects within it.
Right. We could deal with additional presuppositions, but there's not infinite presuppositions.
There are. There's an infinite number of ontologies that you could have. Absolutely.
How many people have ever existed? We only have presuppositions.
No, there's an infinite number of possible ontologies.
You can imagine, but you can't define infinity. So
I can define an infinite set of ontologies, for example.
And we're talking about in the realm of physics, which I wouldn't even dare debate you into physics, but that's far more complicated probably than the average viewer is even going to comprehend when it comes to understanding different sets of infinity. But we're not talking about necessarily that. Let's get back to the point of
so you should defend your position, because attacking mine won't justify yours, because my position is not the only position that my position is not the only position that disagrees with yours.
If you can destruct all atheistic foundations that they have to stand on with that fact that they are presupposing an ultimate illogical loop in their logical thinking, and that they're presupposing things and borrowing from the Christian worldview to implement and utilize in their life. They're just living in hypocrisy and suppression of the truth.
So demonstrate that then. Demonstrate that all possible atheistic worldviews are possible, and that just do that. Go ahead.
I heard one comment earlier. Somebody said you have a PhD in physics.
I do.
You don't wake up every day assuming that the laws of physics have changed.
Okay.
You assume.
So how does that disprove all atheistic worldviews?
Allow me to build upon my comments.
Okay.
Everything you do in life, you wake up every day and you assume things are going to be held in order. You're going to assume things today are like they were yesterday, so on and so forth. But you have no justification in believing that. And in fact...
Oh, that's an assertion. How do you know?
If you stay within the naturalistic worldview that you have, you don't have any good reason to believe that physics will stay the same.
Are you a mind reader now?
Same. Do you believe that physics always existed?
I don't. Physics is a study. It's a thing that humans do. So no, obviously it didn't always exist.
Gravity didn't always exist in your worldview, did it?
Do you mean gravity the phenomenon or gravity our description?
The phenomenon.
I lean towards it having always existed. Yeah.
Right. It came about through physics. Through
no. Physics is a description of the phenomenon.
We'll call it the process of what took place that caused the thing.
Gravity would not have come about if it always existed.
Yeah, but let's try not to play word games here.
This isn't a word game. We're being precise with our language.
Right. That's exactly what I'm trying to do. Physics, obviously, as a subject, defines the things of reality. Otherwise, it's pointless. So when we are thinking about anything, that's just conceptual thoughts. But when we actually ask ourselves questions about reality and what exists, that's an entire separate thing that we have to, weigh in on. And so for the fact is, if you just dial the time back, however long, billions of years you believe in, then you have to realize that all the physical properties and the chemical things and all the different whatnot things that have taken place have contributed to the ultimate, what you're studying at this point in time, quantum mechanics and all that, so on and so forth. But the fact of the matter is, it's like, for example,
is this
you would go
is
ahead.
This are you actually going to get to the justification at some point for why the atheistic worldview is impossible?
It's impossible because of the fact that there's no logical presupposition that you can utilize that justifies your entire worldview.
Okay, what's the justification for that assertion? Because you just restated the assertion. You just said atheism is impossible because it can't ground itself. Okay, what's the justification for that assertion?
You also, I know atheists tend to say that they don't have to prove or disprove because you can't prove a negative, but you have to build a foundation on which why you are appealing to laws of logic, consistency, all these different things. You have no justification to appeal to any of these things.
I'm not the one making an argument right now. You are. What's the justification?
There is no logical answer for me.
Okay. How do you justify that statement? How do you justify that there's no logical explanation under atheism? Why should anybody believe that?
Is to define it, all they do is spin wheels and they don't give any response. There's no response given ever because there is no response. There's no logical foundation to have when you claim a naturalistic, materialistic worldview such as yours, or atheistic, when you deny God's existence.
Hey, Christopher. Christopher, something just came up. Family emergency. I got a dip.
Okay, no problem.
Sorry, we can continue this a little later.